All right, what's going on? Drive time Thursday afternoon, about 5 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. Tell you what, man, 40 degrees and sunny hits different in late January. I know a lot of people are hoping we get snow in the benches. I'm not one of those people. Snow in the mountains, be sunny down here, and I'm all for it. So it's about 41 degrees and sunny at about 2:05 here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah, right outside our Broadway Media Studios. And as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic. That's Porter Larson. Behind the Glass, jam-packed Thursday show as we're inching closer and closer to the weekend. A lot to do on the program today. The Utah Jazz welcome in an old friend tonight. Rudy Gobert and the Minnesota Timberwolves are in Salt Lake City to take on the Jazz. That's a 7 o'clock Mountain Time tip. Minnesota's played a little bit better as of late after a really rough start, and the Jazz are an unserious organization. But Minnesota in town tonight, 7 o'clock is your tip. Fun night of NBA basketball last night. The New York Knicks beat the Denver Nuggets at Madison Square Garden. And fun game. And the Knicks are kind of this outlier in pro basketball right now. All five of their starters play over 35 minutes a night. And obviously Tom Thibodeau has been criticized quite a bit for his approach in the past. But the Knicks are a fun team to watch this year. Fun game between the Mavericks and the Pelicans. The T-Wolves were in action last night. They were in Phoenix. They beat the Suns. And now they're here in Salt Lake City. So, second night of a back-to-back for Minnesota, taking on the Jazz tonight. Fun night last night as the Warriors beat the Thunder, despite Shea going for half 100 once again. And so the NBA, high-speed ahead of the trade deadline, kind of a lighter night tonight with 5 total games in pro basketball. TNT has a double dip. It's going to be the Hawks and the Cavs and the Rockets and the Grizzlies. Rockets and the Grizzlies, the return of Dillon Brooks to Memphis as the Rockets are playing really, really well. So that's a big game tonight at the FedEx Forum. We'll do a little NBA basketball on the show today as we're high speed ahead to the trade deadline, that February 6th, the trade deadline. Another rumor surfaced earlier today that the Jazz and the Kings have been engaged in talks for a deal that would land John Collins in Sacramento. Will the Jazz be active? Will they do anything? They've already sent 3 picks to the Phoenix Suns in exchange for an unprotected 2031. So we'll get to that. Super Bowl 59, Chiefs-Eagles on Sunday, February the 9th. Kansas City has won 17 straight games decided by 1 score. This is a rematch of the Super Bowl a couple of years ago when it looked like Philly was going to get them, and then Kansas City came back because that's what Kansas City does. But the latest on the Super Bowl coming up, the latest on the world of pro football, the New Orleans Saints are still trying to find their head coach. After former Cowboys coach Mike McCarthy said thanks but no thanks, he's going to wait for the coaching hire cycle in 2026. Kellen Moore apparently is the favorite there, but he's the offensive coordinator for the Eagles, so he's busy right now. Another football player accused of inappropriate behavior during massage sessions. So we'll get to that bad look certainly on the program today. College basketball, local, top-of-mind awareness. Craig Smith will join the program tomorrow, the head coach of the Running Utes. They're back in action coming up on Saturday. 1 o'clock tip time out of Oklahoma State. 3 of the next 4 games on the road. 1 home game there is on February the 5th. So next week, Colorado will be in town. And then it's at West Virginia, at Cincinnati. And on February the 15th, Rock Chalk Jayhawks. We're going to have to get Bill Riley on the show that week. I wonder if Bill ever thought he'd be calling a Kansas game here in Salt Lake. Of course, Bill, that is his alma mater. So Bill will be on the call for Kansas, Utah in Salt Lake. BYU has figured something out, man. They played a lot better as of late. They've won 3 straight. They've won 4 of 5. That one loss was here in Salt Lake City to the Utes. They're on the road at UCF, home against Arizona, then at Cincinnati, at West Virginia. Really good win for them against Baylor. Cannon Catchings, if you're wondering why pro scouts like that kid, and apparently 25, 30 pro scouts at that game, man, he was lights out, played really, really well. So college basketball, top of mind right now. The Utah women continue to play well. Back-to-back wins over Kansas and BYU. They're going to take on Arizona coming up tomorrow, 6:30. And that will be on FS1. Of course, you can hear the game on our station. That game is here in Salt Lake at the Huntsman Center. So head on up and support those Utah Utes. Utah Hockey Club fans were present and witness to a historic goal, quite frankly. Sidney Crosby, Sid the Kid, 20 years in professional hockey, scored the game winner in overtime. as the Penguins beat the Utah Hockey Club 3-2. The Utah Hockey Club, after winning 3 straight, they've now lost 3 straight games. They're back in action tomorrow, taking on the Blue Jackets. Busy week for our friends at the Delta Center. The Delta Center is home to several events this week. And Utah Hockey Club fans were treated to a fake vote. Did you pretend to vote for the new name last night? It's going to be the Mammoth, isn't it? It's going to be the Mammoth. I'm afraid that's going to be the deal. Utah Wasatch was forced upon you without any input. So if you want to know whether or not your vote matters, I guess that's kind of the example. The spin from the SEG group is that that's in place of the Yeti because they want to create some corny snowman to be the mascot. But for the next 3 home games, Utah Hockey Club will pretend to allow you to vote on the name. And then they will take your email address and use that for data for Qualtrics. And then they're just going to pick the name they want to go with. So anyway, are you interested in the truth? Do you really care? I don't know, man. Seems like these days most people are not. RSL, another preseason match today. We're high speed ahead to the first game of the calendar season. It's a CONCACAF match down in Costa Rica, I believe. And CONCACAF Champions Cup first leg, and then we'll launch into MLS play. So we're kind of inching towards spring. Today feels a little spring-ish. Obviously, plenty of winter left with February and March. So a lot to do. Busy show on the program today. With a really, really good guest list. We'll bring in Andy Larson right off the top for all the latest on the Utah Jazz, latest on the trade deadline. Maybe do a little RSL with Andy today, and then talk about the current situation with the naming process for the Utah Hockey Club. I know Andy has some thoughts on that. Scott Mitchell, one of the best to ever do it at the University of Utah, former NFL quarterback. We'll do mostly pro football with Scott today. We'll do a little Super Bowl preview, and if time allows, of course, latest on the Big 12 Utah football situation. We've already talked about the odds that were released and the Bill Conley S&P Plus 12-team CFP projection that included the Utes. Not sure if people are excited about that or like, here we go again, but we'll bring in Scott today on the program. Former producer of this program, he is on the masthead as a founder of The Drive. Now he's over with our friends at the Utah Jazz. And he is the play-by-play voice of the Utah Stars. He's the play-by-play voice of the Utah Royals. He's a very busy young man. JP, John Paul Chunga, live in studio. Then we'll do a little sports court on this Thursday afternoon. Andy Larson, Scott Mitchell, JP Chunga, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, happy Thursday to you. And that guy, Porter Larson, producing the program on a Thursday. Did you attend the game last night to give your email address to Qualtrics or pretend to vote? Were you there?
I voted 5 or 6 different times with 5 or 6 different emails that were not mine, just to make sure I got my voice heard, but none of my data harvested.
It's going to be the Mammoth, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, it's going to be the Mammoth.
I think so, but I'm not entirely sure. I think it'll be the Mammoth of the hockey club going forward, and I'm fine with either of those. I just think the process to the unveil could have been a lot cleaner, and that's still underway. But, we'll get to a bunch of that with Andy, catch up with JP, and go from there on a Thursday edition of the show.
By the way, I sneezed 7 times before the show started.
7?
Like right before the show started. I think that might be a personal record. Do you have a personal record for consecutive sneezes?
I don't know if I have data on that.
You don't track your sneeze?
I should ask Qualtrics.
What kind of communist doesn't track their sneeze? Their sneezes. Everybody has a personal record for sneezes. I guarantee it.
I grew up with a allergy to cottonwood trees in the river bottoms, full of cottonwood trees. So I've gone on sneezing fits that have lasted like minutes before, I feel like. So I don't know. It's up there, though.
7 straight might be my record, and it was right before I cracked the mic. And I'm like, all right, because I'm usually a 3 sneeze guy, and then I'm done with it. I'm also a very aggressive sneezer. If you're watching on YouTube and you saw me before the show, there's something about my makeup where, there's some, women who sneeze and it's cute. You're like, oh, it's cute. It's quiet. I am an aggressive sneezer. I don't know why I always have been.
Well, you know why?
I do not know why.
You know what sneezes are?
Please tell.
It's your sins and evil escaping.
What are you talking about? Did you join a cult overnight? What do you mean it's the evil escaping?
Isn't that like an old...
No, I feel like you just made that up.
I think that's like an old belief of some belief system.
Well, I
somewhere.
guess to your point, it makes sense. We'll leave that there. Andy Larson will be our first guest right out of the gates on a Thursday afternoon, a lovely, sunny Thursday afternoon here in Salt Lake City. But the ESPN 700 Cash Kickoff is here. It's time for your shot to win $1,000 in cash to pay your bills. Text FUN right now to 508-777-1000. Text FUN to 508-777-1000 for a chance to win $1,000 in cash in this nationwide contest. Good luck from all of us at ESPN 700. All right, Andy Larson, our first guest on a Thursday afternoon. But before we get to Andy, courtesy of our good friends, your good friends too, at Standard Restaurant Supply. It's your one-stop shop for all your tailgate needs. Stop by their convenient location in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah, or check them out online. Our good friends at Standard Restaurant Supply on a Thursday. Time now for your opening tip. So I was kind of kicking this around earlier this morning as, of course, the Super Bowl is upon us in, about 7-8 days or so, coming up a week from Sunday. Of course, we'll get you ready for the big game coming up next week. It'll be Super Bowl week between the Chiefs and the Eagles once again. It's a rematch of a couple of years ago, Super Bowl 59 down in the Big Easy, down in New Orleans. And a lot of conversation about Howie Roseman and roster construction for Philadelphia and, ultimately what you need as an organization to be very, very successful, not just have a couple of good years and then head back down to the spot where nobody pays attention to you anymore. I mean, Jerry West always talked about the difference between good and great is simply consistency. Can you do it night in and night out? As an organization, can you win year in and year out? And even if you're not winning championships, do you at least have a shot? And in pro basketball, that's really all you can ask for. Like, we've talked about this, and, I'm going to land the plane here as Rudy Gobert is in town, and we'll do a little content today on the Wolves Jazz trade that was consummated for Gobert, of course, a few years ago. Always fun to kind of revisit that when Rudy's in town. But the roster construction, what's important, and for me, it's always been ownership and front office. Of course, you need great players, talent, period, end of story. I can remember a number of years ago, a college professor of mine asked me to go interview somebody who had a job that I thought was interesting that maybe one day I'd like to do, and Scott Layden was the general manager of the Jazz. And part of the interview process was you're supposed to ask this person who the most important people are in the organization and why. And this was 1997, 1998. And I asked Scott, in our interview process, okay, who are the most important people in the Jazz organization? I thought he was going to say Larry Miller, Gail Miller, the ownership group. He didn't even pump fake. I thought he might say Jerry Sloan. He said it's John Stockton and Karl Malone. So those are the two most important people in this organization, because when you can win at a high level, it cures a myriad of sins. That's a Frank Layden line that he's used often, a lot, about simply the importance. And Gordy Chiesa always drops the line, when Karl Malone made free throws, it was better for the state's economy. So, you need the talent, period, end of story. And a lot of the conversation about the way the Chiefs have constructed their roster can be reduced to 15 under center. Now, it's not just him, but a lot of it is him. We saw what happened to the Patriots when Brady took off to Tampa Bay. I mean, when you have one of those dudes under center, it changes the course of your organization. It changes the course of what you can be on the field as far as winning goes. And when you win, everything changes. And, roster construction in the NFL is a little bit different than roster construction in pro basketball, but there are some similarities as far as organizations and structures that, historically speaking, have bred great results. Because we really find ourselves in a difficult spot right now with this Jazz team and this process that already is in, nearly 3 years in the making, and really hasn't bred a lot of things that are tangible outside of marketing. You've got a lot of assets, you've got a lot of picks, but as I said, when the Gobert trade went down and everybody said, oh man, I cannot believe what the Jazz got for Rudy Gobert. Well, ultimately, yes, on paper, but only time will tell whether or not this was a good deal. Only time will tell whether or not the Jazz talent evaluators and roster constructors were able to, turn any of these draft assets and any of these picks into not rotational pieces, but good players that can bring you back to where you were before you decided to trade Gobert and Mitchell and everybody else. Royce, Bogdanovich, Conley, Quinn leaves, Dennis Lindsey leaves. Brand new era of Jazz basketball that at this point has not bred anything that's very exciting. And, of course, when you look back, T-Wolves get Rudy, and Rudy's been really good for them. I'm not sure that it was ever going to lead them to a championship, and that ownership group after that deal was left in flux, and there's this weird thing going on with a lawsuit. Alex Rodriguez on one side, and, ultimately they had to make a financial decision, so they move on from Karl Anthony Towns. They're bringing Julius Randle. And if you're a Jazz fan, that's awesome because Randle is like Westbrook to me. You can have him. If you want to be in the Julius Randle business, you can have him, man. And that's why I think Minnesota has kind of come back down to earth. But just to revisit it real quick, Minnesota gets Gobert. The Jazz received Malik Beasley, played here for a minute, and then was ultimately traded. At the time, I believe it was the Lakers. I think he's in Detroit now. Patrick Beverley never played here. Leandro Bomaro, not really sure what the deal is with that dude. The Jazz did get Walker Kessler, who's really good and really young. That was a value piece of that trade because Walker was the number 22 pick in the draft by Minnesota. Jared Vanderbilt, who's now a Laker. So the one player they received was Walker Kessler. So they get a 23 first-round pick, already been used. They get a 25 first-round pick. That will potentially be used coming up this year because I do not think the Cavs are going to come back down to earth to the point where Minnesota's pick will be the pick that goes to Phoenix. So I would imagine the Jazz are going to have that Minnesota pick this year. They get a 26 pick swap. I don't think that's going to be used. I would be surprised. A 27 first-round pick, a 29 first-round pick. So four first-round picks, one pick swap, and Walker Kessler for Rudy Gobert. So, but at this point, you can really analyze it as simply Gobert versus Kessler, right? Until we know what the draft capital turns into, and until we know exactly what the Jazz have been able to do with the pieces they received for Rudy, this is still a very incomplete trade. The trade they just made with the Phoenix Suns has been celebrated by a lot of nerds online that analyze these things, but we still don't know what that's going to look like. You sent 3 first-round picks, all 3 of them most likely in the late first round, to Phoenix in exchange for a wild card, in exchange for a 2031 unprotected pick from the Phoenix Suns. We will not know what that deal breeds until 2031. Maybe the Jazz are the cousin that drives up to Idaho and buys a lottery ticket and comes home and they're rich all of a sudden because they win the lottery. But we won't know that, right? And so when you think about the roster market that the Jazz exist in, what gives you hope that the Jazz at some point could finally get this thing done after 50-plus years of basketball and no titles? I always point to the Spurs dynasty that essentially started in 1999 when the Spurs beat the Knicks. They had David Robinson and Tim Duncan on that team. Duncan was, I think, in his second year, and David Robinson was at the end of his career. And it was a number of years. Well, it was only 3 years, actually, until they were able to win another one. The Lakers with Kobe and Shaq were able to get their 3 titles between 2000 and 2002. Spurs win in 2003. They win again in 2005. They win again in 2007. And it even extended all the way to 2014 when San Antonio beat Miami with LeBron James 4-1. So because San Antonio was able to build a team that was not just able to win a championship or 2, but truly was a dynasty for a number of different years, ultimately I've always kind of looked at them as the benchmark for why I still believe it is possible for the Jazz to do the same thing. Because we can't look at Miami when LeBron and D. Wade and Bosh just decided to team up. We can't look at Los Angeles because NBA players want to live in L.A. Even past dynasties, the Golden State Warriors with Stephen Curry. I mean, there are actually more things that we can be analogous with the Jazz and Golden State than meets the eye because Golden State did draft, develop, and retain, and then they were able to add pieces around Steph, Clay, and Draymond. But all 3 of those guys were drafted by Golden State. They were developed by Golden State, and they were retained by Golden State. But only after those 3 started to show some special things did a former All-Star like Andre Iguodala want to come play for Steve Kerr and Golden State. So, yeah, I mean, there are some things that we can draw parallels to, but San Antonio, starting in 1999, going through 2014, with essentially 15, 16 years of top-shelf basketball, has always been the blueprint for me to say, yes, if you can do it there, you can do it here. Because all due respect to San Antonio, it's not the spot. If you've ever been there, Salt Lake City, at least in my opinion, is a better city. And then recently we have some other examples. So, yes, I am reaching here and stretching here to try to give Jazz fans a little hope because the current iteration under this new ownership group has not provided much hope at all. And recently, there are other examples that we can lean into. Okay. So 2 years ago, the Denver Nuggets, by the way, they were your cousin who drove up to Idaho to get the lottery ticket and then came back down to Salt Lake and watching Powerball. Boom, they win the lottery. It came in the form of the 43rd pick in the draft where they received Nikola Jokic, who has been the best player in pro basketball, quite frankly, for 6-7 years. And when he is done, he will be known as the best player of this generation. And he's having another phenomenal year. I think Shea's the MVP, but Jokic is right there. And so that's a blueprint you can look at because Denver is not a city that's all that bigger than Utah, Salt Lake, and it's not a city that's a destination. And it is a city that needs a little bit of luck, just like we do here. The other example I'll lean into is the Milwaukee Bucks in 2021. Now, it's very easy for me to say, do what Denver did, do what Milwaukee did, but that's where the golden ticket has to come into play because just like Denver won the lottery with Jokic, Milwaukee won the lottery with Giannis. And still, every time I lock into a Bucks game and Giannis does the Giannis thing, I still believe they're going to have something to say when it comes to winning a championship. You could be a little bit analogous with the Toronto Raptors title back in 2018, 2019, but they won that title with Masai Ujiri being able to negotiate a deal that was a rental for Kawhi for 1 year, and that was peak Kawhi. At the time, he was probably a top 5 player in pro basketball. But the other examples, I mean, look, you can't really use the Celtics. We already talked about the Nuggets. Then there's the Lakers. There's the Warriors. There's Miami, a couple of different times. The Mavs had one title when Dirk went peak Dirk, and they beat the Miami Heat as well. It's tough to look at most of the examples and say, okay, they did it this way, and the Jazz can probably do it that way as well. But there are some examples, certainly in the past, and the NBA is different now, but that San Antonio, that peak San Antonio 15-year run, and then the international guys that don't seem to move teams as much as the domestic guys do. I know I get pushback when I say that, but it's just the data that we have. If Dallas gets one with Luka, there's another one. Dallas is a big market. I think they're number 6, so it's not as clean of a parallel as it is between Salt Lake and Denver or Salt Lake and Milwaukee, and, of course, Salt Lake and San Antonio. But it's tough right now, and I know that a lot of fans just want to go to a game, and that's why Jazz fans continue to show up, and maybe you learn a little something about Isaiah Collier and Walker Kessler and some of these young players. But the road between where the Jazz are now and where a team like Oklahoma City is, it is a marathon. And I can't even sit here and say they're 2-3 years away from being back in the mix. It feels like it's more than that. It feels like it's 4, 5, 6. Are you willing to be patient with that process? Only time will tell. All right, Andy Larson joins us coming up on the other side. Some good stuff with the Jazz today. Trade rumors. Do a little RSO with Andy, too. Scott Mitchell, JP Chunga. Busy Thursday show. Keep it right here on ESPN 700.
things.
So let me clear this up because I'm sure
Just go stumbling.
so upset. San Antonio won the championship in 2014 over Miami, but the year before, Miami beat them. So, my bad. All right, so hopefully everybody's day is fine. We were talking about kind of markets where you can be analogous with roster construction, and they've won championships with Salt Lake City, San Antonio. Small market, Salt Lake City, small market. Our next guest is not a small market talent, but he does work here. His name is Andy Larson on a Thursday. Andy, happy Thursday, buddy. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. So that's kind of where I started the show today, just talking about some roster construction stuff. And, you know, the recent examples of Denver with Jokic and Milwaukee with Giannis. And then, of course, the San Antonio dynasty, just trying to because, look, it's a rough scene. And I'm not going to break down the recent Drew Eubanks minutes. Like, we're just trying to figure out how we can give this fan base some hope that maybe a championship is in the future. And, of course, a lot of this is the context is a lot of luck. It's Jokic in the second round. It's Giannis in the mid-first. It's that great team with Duncan, and you need luck, and the Jazz haven't had it. But what are your thoughts on that? For the fan base out here, like, can we ever win a championship, and some of examples that we could be a little bit analogous with?
Yeah, I think it's possible, and I think you're right that, like, San Antonio is a reasonable comp. Like, they are similar-sized cities and similar front offices, like, Greg Popovich and R.C. Buford were really clear that they built that first version of the Spurs kind of on the model of what the Utah Jazz could be in the late 90s. And kind of a small market team that works hard, that kind of builds a roster together. And, the Spurs won a championship and the Jazz didn't, but I certainly don't think it's impossible for the Jazz to. And heck, fast forward even to today where, De'Aaron Fox wants probably out of Sacramento, is looking for his next home, and the San Antonio Spurs look like an attractive destination for him because they have Victor Wembanyama, and he can imagine playing with one of the league's best talents for the next 5 years, right? So, like, I think it does all start with the draft, but if you are able to nail that and you are able to get really, really, really good talent in the draft, then yeah, everything can come together and you can actually win titles.
And I was drawing the parallel between, the NFL teams that are left standing and what they've done to kind of build, because, Philly on paper has superior talent to Kansas City. Kansas City has 15 under center, and they have Andy Reid. And ultimately, building a roster in pro basketball is a little bit different than it is in pro football, but the pillars remain the same, and it's ownership, front office. Now, you have to have talent, obviously. And, of course, you want a guy that can coach. I think the Jazz have that guy that can coach for sure. I think we all believe if Will has really, really good talent at some point, we'll see him maximize good talent. We've seen him maximize mediocre talent, so I think we all believe they have the right guy on the bench. But do they have the right guy in charge? Do they have the right guy as far as the ownership group? Do they have the right guy in the front office? I think that's very much still a question mark, Andy.
Yeah, and I think so. A couple questions. Yeah, does Danny Ainge draft well? I think is a question. Clearly his draft picks worked out for the Boston Celtics. But there are also a number of question marks with him kind of later on in the draft, and then frankly with the Jazz, the 6 picks that Danny Ainge has made over the last 2 years have not been successful picks. I think it's fair to say. And those guys are still young and can develop, but have not set the world on fire in their first year or two. And then, ownership, I think Ryan Smith impressed me by, paying the luxury tax in the first year. But obviously the branding stuff, both with the hockey club and the Jazz, have been big missteps. I think it's fair to question, a variety of other moves. I also think that in the NBA, if you have the player and coach, it kind of doesn't matter. And I look across the Rocky Mountains at the Denver Nuggets, where the Crankies are known as really cheap owners and are not putting together a terrific front office there in Denver. They're not a highly regarded front office or a highly regarded ownership group. But still, because they had Nikola Jokic and because they put together good players around him who played their best basketball, and then I think Michael Malone's a really, really good coach. They were able to win a title. And so, you just kind of need like the right intersection of things to come together at the right time. in order for it to work out. But I don't think that like this ownership group is going to prevent the Jazz from winning a title or anything like that.
And I want to be clear because I said, as far as the front office, do they have the right guys in charge? And, Danny's track record speaks for itself. I'm not necessarily concerned about whether or not Danny's good at his job. I just wonder how present he is. I just wonder how involved he is. We see him at a lot of college games, and he does some media here or there. And I don't think you're going to meet anybody around pro basketball that doesn't really respect Justin, and I certainly do as well. But to your point, when you have the talent, when you have the coaching, that seems to be, some things that can maybe cover up certain issues with the ownership group or the front office. And anecdotally, I shared this earlier. When I was in college, a professor of mine gave us all an assignment to go interview somebody who's doing something currently that we think would be cool to do at some point. And I sat down with Scott Layden, who was the GM of the Jazz at the time. And one of the questions we were supposed to ask them is, who are the most important people in the organization? Who are the most important people in your business and why? And when I asked Scott that, I thought he was going to say Larry Miller, thought he was going to say Gail. He didn't even blink. He said it's John Stockton and Karl Malone, period. End of story. Two most important people, not players, two most important people in the organization. So maybe it is just a matter of when you find those unicorns, Denver is your cousin that drove up to Idaho to get the lottery ticket, and they won the lottery with Jokic in the second round, and Milwaukee did it with Giannis mid-first round. Maybe that's what this is. Maybe that's all it is, and we're just overthinking it.
I kind of think so, yeah. And, not that everybody does matter, right? We saw the last iteration of the Jazz kind of fail to put a good enough core around Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, who also, just weren't top 5 players. We also saw that, the previous group before them failed to put a good enough group around John Stockton and Karl Malone, right? That's ultimately why the Stockton and Malone team didn't win the title. Front office does matter, but you're right. In the end, it's probably the quality of star players that you have. And, I think that's why a little bit what the Jazz are doing with the tanking makes some sense, because Cooper Flagg does look like a really top number 1 prospect. And if you do have every chance to go get him, even if that chance is only a 14% chance, which it is, I think you have to open your organization to that possibility because, frankly, without him or without that caliber of player, you're not really going anywhere.
All right, to the current situation where we find ourselves with the Jazz, let's start with, and I don't know who to credit here, but about 2 weeks ago I saw something where it's Sacramento's in on John Collins, and maybe that's something that comes down and goes through. You've got some intel here, so you talked to John about it, and so tell us what John had to say when you presented this to him, and what's your understanding about, A, whether or not they were close to making this deal, and B, whether or not it's still on the table.
Yeah, James Ham, who's one of the best beat writers in Sacramento, reported that the Kings had gotten to final talks in a trade conversation with the Jazz about John Collins. And in particular, they were going to send Kevin Huerter, Trey Lyles, a first-round pick and a second-round pick to the Jazz for John Collins. Brett Siegel, presented that package. He's the reporter who did that, but everyone agrees those were kind of basically the terms of the deal. And then for whatever reason, those final contract negotiations either fell apart or put on ice. Apparently, James Ham says, again, the Kings reporter says that they had even told the players that John Collins was coming to Sacramento, which is pretty wild, right? You rarely hear of a team telling a group of players that this trade is going to be done if it's not done yet, right? So I went to John Collins today at shoot-around and just asked him about that, frankly, and said, hey, did you know about that? And he didn't. It was pretty clear. He was honest. He asked me to repeat it twice. He had not heard about this potential trade to Sacramento. He had seen, the rumors that, hey, maybe the Kings might be interested along with a couple of other teams, but he hadn't heard those rumors. So I thought that was interesting. And then, but he said, look, he's also not playing right now because he's on the trade market and because the Jazz are tanking. And he, I think a trade in some ways does make sense to him. And he's kind of in this catch-22 where I think he likes Utah and he likes the situation, he likes his teammates, but likes Will Hardy, so on and so forth. But I would prefer to play basketball, and it has been kind of a frustrating year for him. So he's trying to be a pro and is a really, I think, a great guy to talk to. Is really friendly with the media. It's just a tough situation, and he knows, look, we're a week away from the trade deadline. The Kings are clearly very interested, and that could still happen with the De'Aaron Fox deal. But from his point of view, he's riding it out for the next week and trying to stay focused on what he can control, which is obviously not these trade rumors.
Did you say Kevin Huerter, Trey Lyles, a first and a second? Did I hear that right?
That's what Brett Siegel reported at Clutch Points.
Feels like a lot for John Collins, question mark?
Yeah, and yet, so, like, Kevin Huerter has had a really bad season. And so the Kings have been willing to put him, they've benched him. They've been willing to put him into trade conversations because he does have a relatively big contract, and he's only shooting 30% from three this year. So where I would have considered before this season Kevin Huerter to be a real plus, they no longer think of him that way. I kind of would buy low on him and see, what he could bring to the Jazz. I would be kind of excited about that move, even just 1-to-1, but it looks like, yeah, Kevin Huerter plus Trey Lyles plus a pick was the offer reported, and again, I've heard that kind of package from not just Siegel, not just the Clutch Points guy, but from other sources as well.
Any other rumors out there about potential moves? I mean, I think I said this to you a week ago. It's hard to know. I mean, I know the guys I trust, and I go to their individual websites or I go to their individual socials, but I don't know, man. My Twitter algorithm is so messed up. Sometimes I'll just get a random trade rumor or a link, and I always click on it, and they always talk about the Jazz, and we're hearing Colin Sexton. We're hearing Jordan Clarkson. So what are you hearing as far as other potential moves that the Jazz could make prior to the deadline?
Yeah, I guess I'm not hearing anything specific other than the Collins to Sacramento Kings stuff about individual players to individual teams. I'm with you. I'm reading those reports. By the way, like, the website Hoops Hype is really useful, and GMs and executives around the league also use Hoops Hype to kind of get to combine and compile these rumors all in one place. But yeah, so, like, I think there is league-wide interest in Colin Sexton, or I guess not league-wide, but there are some teams interested in acquiring him as a scoring guard. Jordan Clarkson is less attractive, I think, just because he's been playing less well on the court. And, there are even, like, some Drew Eubanks mentions out there, which is kind of interesting as, like, a potential backup center for a team that may need him. I don't know that the Jazz are going to get a lot in those trade conversations for some of those other guys, but it is interesting that there does seem to be those names floating around the market as potential answers for some of these teams.
So oftentimes, and I, tongue-in-cheek about the Drew Eubanks minutes earlier, I mean, Drew Eubanks is a good backup center. I'm not saying he doesn't have value, but there are times where I'll see rotational decisions and just kind of roll my eyes like, all right, there's nothing there. But the Keontae George coming off the bench decision is not nothing, because I've talked to you about this, most of our national NBA guys about this too. At some point, you got to figure out who he is. At some point, you got to figure out whether or not he's part of the future plans. At some point, you have to figure out whether or not he has a role for a team that actually is trying to win. And my analysis of him on a good team is that he is a scoring combo guard off the bench. Now, the Jazz have one in Colin Sexton. They have one in Jordan Clarkson. There's some redundancy on the roster. But what do you perceive the goal is with Will now bringing Keontae off the bench and starting Isaiah Collier?
The goal is, and we asked Will about this in press conferences and otherwise, the goal is to get Keontae to play defense. Straight up. Like, we, as much as it could be cool to, elevate Isaiah Collier and, he's playing kind of pass first basketball. The goal is to give Keontae a little bit of a wake up call. Like, hey, what you're doing right now isn't enough. And he simply has to try more on the defensive end, or else he is not an NBA player. He is the worst defender on the worst defense in basketball. I guess now the Jazz are the second worst defense in basketball. The Wizards
Nice.
have been playing a lot,
Nice.
but yeah,
Progress.
it is. It's and then also and if you can maybe get away with that if you're a stellar offensive player and he's shooting 38% from the field on offense. So it's just meant to be a wake up call to Keontae George. You have to play defense. You have to start trying more on that end. I've seen him try a little bit more in the game since the benching. The problem is, he told us the other day, he's never had a coach before Will Hardy get on him about his defensive play before. And that's wild to me. Like, how have you gone through 20 years of coaching before having this happen to you? But heck, in an AAU world where he's like a top recruit and known for his scoring and shooting prowess, I also kind of understand how that might have happened. And so this is a new world for Keontae, and I think even when he tries, he's still not good on that end, but it's got to start with effort. I think that's what the Jazz are hoping for by moving him to the bench is to see more of that effort and to see his focus change so that it's not about whether or not he looks at a game as a success based on how many points he has, but on what he does on both ends of the floor.
Probably because he came up in AAU, he was never coached to play defense. But Scott Drew at Baylor is thought to be a defensive-minded coach. That is a pretty stunning admission. Not going to lie.
Agreed, and I was surprised at that too. It was not even at the college level, and I didn't go back and forth with Keontae on that, but he said that's the first time in his life that a coach has been on him about his defense. And again, that's surprising to me. It wasn't surprising when I told Will Hardy about that to him, just because A, we see it on the floor, and B, that's that is the environment where guys kind of are in right now, where coaches are afraid really talented players are going to transfer AAU programs or transfer colleges. There is kind of this reluctance right now to coach, and it's I think there are some really good young players who try really hard on the defensive end, but for some players, and I give Isaiah Collier, frankly, a lot of credit there, where he was the number one high school recruit and clearly is giving a better effort on defense than Keontae. So, I don't think all of the kids are screwed necessarily or anything, but in Keontae's case, it's just got to be so much better.
All right, Minnesota's in town tonight, and that always gives us the ability to look back on the Rudy Gobert deal and the Rudy Gobert trade and analyze where we're at with it today. Now, when the deal was made, I felt like I was the only one that was like, look, we'll see. I mean, on paper, yes, was it a lot? Sure, it was a lot, but only time will tell. The player they received was Walker, and Walker's really good. And it's really exciting to see what he's done this year and potentially analyze what he could be if he keeps working and stays healthy. The pick that they've used so far was Keontae. Jury very much still out. All the other players they received in that deal no longer on the team. In 2 years in Minnesota, Rudy more or less has done more or less what he did here. Maybe outside of those 2-3 year, real peak Gobert years. Minnesota, I thought, last couple of years, maybe one of the teams in the West that may have a shot. They made a financial move because their ownership situation is in flux to get rid of Karl Anthony Towns. But as we sit here today, looking back on the deal a number of years ago, what's the Andy Larson take?
Yeah, I mean, I still think we're in that kind of same position where the most valuable picks are still to come. Walker Kessler is still a very good piece. I'd still rather be on the Jazz side of the deal, kind of in a vacuum. The Jazz, I think, the Jazz hoped when they made that trade that they would have a short rebuild, right? That rather than draft all of those players with all of those picks, they would be able to trade them for a star moving forward. And that's clearly not happened, and that goal has been delayed, if not abandoned, right? Let's start there. But what happens with the other picks really matters. And, I think the Timberwolves are probably less good than they hoped that they would be after the trade, right? Look, they're, 2 or 3 games above 500 right now. And I do think you've seen significant slippage this year from Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert. And, Joe Ingles is not an NBA player anymore. As a result, if I'm betting over the next, just over the next 5 years, which player I'd rather have on my team, I'm probably taking Walker Kessler over Rudy Gobert. just because of how old they are and what happens to players as their age curve advances. So ultimately, yeah, I'm still kind of taking the Jazz's end of the deal in the value proposition, and it's up to the Jazz to make the best of those picks that they do have from Minnesota left over still.
All right, away from the Jazz, we have some breaking news. We will not play our cheesy breaking news sounders, but according to the Utah Hockey Club, this just came down 3 minutes ago. I'll just read the tweet. Hey, Utah hockey fans, we listened to your feedback and dug in all the Qualtrics data from last night's survey. No, they didn't. For the team name, it's clear that the Outlaws should be in the mix instead of Wasatch, so we're swapping it out. The surveys will continue at the arena on Friday. No, they won't. Sunday and Tuesday, liar. For you to vote, no, you won't. For the options, which are now Utah Mammoth, Utah Hockey Club, and the Utah Outlaws. What's your reaction to this whole cluster? You know what?
I mean, that's a good change. Look, I was really frustrated yesterday with them, with the PR side of it, right? Like, I had a really frank conversation with someone from SEG PR yesterday in the hallway of the Delta Center, and we went back and forth pretty well. I tweeted what I tweeted. Look, I do not. The whole Wasatch thing was a bad idea, and it's a good idea. Good thing that they've replaced it with Outlaws. I think that they have replaced it with Outlaws makes it make sense. Makes it more fan centric than it was before. Clearly, that in my brain, like when I scrolled through Twitter, was kind of the second most favored of the team names that I had seen. And I think that makes it a real contest again, right? Like I thought what they had set up yesterday was fake and was, pointing towards Mammoth because your choices are between a team without a name, a team name that SEG had invented that nobody wanted, and the Utah Mammoth. And now, okay, all of a sudden you've got a second real option there. So I'm excited to see what happens there. I guess the other thing I would say there is that probably means they got the heads up from their lawyers that they could confidently trademark Outlaws, and that's a good thing. So while the process has been convoluted, and I disagree with the idea that the SEG is unique in its connection with fans in the history of professional sports or whatever they put in the press release last night, this change is good.
No, that you pointed it out because the last paragraph in the press release ruled. I'm like, who wrote this? Abraham Hicks? And I'm going to read it. The commitment SEG has to involve the fans and the community in the naming process is unique in the history of professional sports. SEG said they're on track to announce the permanent team name before the start of the 25-26 NHL season. That's not even unique to Utah, let alone all of professional sports. Like, that is a wild assertion.
Look, I pointed that out on Twitter yesterday. They said that's not remarkably false. That's our opinion. And it's like, I just wish, so many of the people over there come from a tech background, right? Where everything is the way to success in tech is through selling high dreams, regardless of whether or not you're making money, regardless of whether or not you're kind of doing well in real world terms. And there is so much of that attitude that permeates SEG, I think, in general. I thought that paragraph was an example of that. I think how this naming process a little bit has been an example of that. And, again, in a lot of other different ways. That being said, credit when credit is due. This swap today that you just told me about, I didn't know about, is a good thing.
I love they said that's their opinion. That reeks of Kellyanne Conway talking about alternative facts. But anyway, do you have a preferred name that you'd like to see when this thing comes to a close?
Ooh, I don't know. Now that it is Mammoth versus Outlaws, I've not thought about it. I'd probably go Outlaws then. I like the alliteration there. I like that it's kind of real to Utah history in like a very neat way. I think, off the top of my head, I'm choosing Outlaws of those three.
Give me one reason why you're optimistic about the Lads this year.
Do I have to? I mean,
just give me one. There's got to be one, Andy.
Okay, the midfield is still awesome.
Okay,
right? Like,
all right.
Yeah, like Ojeda and Anelli and Pablo Ruiz coming back is cool. Nelson Palacio has been great. I'm meeting with those guys tomorrow for a chat about the off season and the season to come, and I'm excited to kind of learn what I learn in that conversation tomorrow morning.
All right, buddy. We'll appreciate the time. The sun is shining, so golf is right around the corner. We got to get out when the snow's gone, okay?
Let's do it. I need it.
All right. Andy Larson, Salt Lake Tribune. Always appreciate his time for the latest on the Utah Jazz and data and such. At Andy B. Larson is where you find him on social media. All right, time now for the PGA Tour Golf Leaderboard Update. It's brought to you by You Into Golf. The new TaylorMade QI35 woods are the fourth generation of the carbon wood technology. Well, that's exciting. This driver unlocks a new level of distance at You Into Golf. Check them out. 560 East, 2100 South, also in Sandy, Riverdale, and Orem. What we have going on right now is the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Spyglass Hill Golf Club in Pebble Beach. Rory McIlroy jarred a hole-in-one earlier today. Your leaders right now, and all of these players are in the clubhouse. Jake Knapp, Justin Rose, and Cam Davis are 7 under par. Aforementioned Rory McIlroy, 6 under, as is Eric Cole, Lee Hodges, Russell Henley, and Sepp Straka. Pretty good leaderboard. Sam Stevens, Austin Eckroat, Scotty Scheffler, look out, Siwoo Kim, Taylor Pendrith, Mackenzie Hughes, and Eric Van Rooyen, and Patrick Cantlay, and Victor Hovland. Wow, all at 5 under par. So, good leaderboard to start things off. Justin Thomas at 4 under, Colin Morikawa at 4 under par, Sam Burns at 3 under par, our local boy Tony Finau at 3 under par, Sahith Theegala as well. Big names on the golf course for the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am, brought to you by our good friends at You Into Golf. All right, 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. We go from basketball to football. Coming up next with Scott Mitchell right here on ESPN 700. All right, still a few days away from Super Bowl 59, but never a bad time to talk football. I never know where our next guest is. He could be in Hawaii. He could be in Germany. He could be golfing. He could be grinding on tape. I'll let him tell us. Scott Mitchell, where you at on a Thursday afternoon?
Just sitting in the living room on the couch. I'm actually building a studio, Spence. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, I think I'm going to be joining the ESPN network of stations here in a couple of weeks.
Do you have something? Do you have something
this
you'd
is
like to?
breaking news.
I was going to say, do you have something you'd like to announce to our audience and, quite frankly, all of us over here?
Yeah, so the old sister station, I guess you call it that, 960.
Sure.
I'm going to be doing a show in the afternoon from 1 to 2. So
All right.
on that station, yeah.
Do we have a name? Do we have a name in place, Scott?
I don't know. I'm thinking the hour of power, or the power hour, or the lunch hour, or because it's only an hour, and I gotta swing for the fences with the hour. So I'm gonna bring the best, the deepest cuts and takes, and just fly off the rails for about an hour on the radio. That's what I'm gonna do.
I like it. The Power Hour with Scott Mitchell. Let's do the Power Hour with Scott Mitchell. I like that.
Okay, all right.
And you know
Off
what?
the rails.
You know what, Scott? Just for you, I'm going to workshop some things tonight. And I'm going to send you a couple ideas. How about we do that?
I would love that.
Okay, love it.
Fire them away. Let's do it.
Well, very exciting, very exciting. All right,
Yeah.
Scott, let's talk a little Super Bowl. But before we get there, let's talk a little conference championship games, and then we'll move on. Let's start with Philly and Washington. We had you on last week. I thought you did a good job of articulating just how exciting year one for Commanders fans was with Jaden Daniels under center. I thought Philly would win, but I thought it would be close, and they smoked them. So takeaways, NFC Championship, Philly moves on, Washington goes home.
Yeah, and really, it's football is about the trenches, and it always is. I mean, you can talk about the marquee players and the stars and the superstars, but it's the guys up front, and Philadelphia might be the best team in the NFL up front right now on offense and defense. They had guys injured on their offensive line, and they were still being very, very effective. And on the other side of it, you have no rookie quarterback has ever taken their team to the Super Bowl, so it's a tall order. But when I hear stats like that, it just tells me it's about time someone did, and that's kind of why I picked Washington, and I've just been so impressed with Jaden Daniels. But this Philadelphia team, they're going to be a tough out. They're really, really athletic in the secondary, and they've been like glue on the receivers for the teams. Pretty prolific offenses, and they've really stepped up their game. And it's going to be interesting to see how well the Chiefs handle that. Because it might take Patrick Mahomes doing a little running magic, and he's done more of that into the playoffs. And it's going to be a tough out. And then Saquon Barkley is he's such a talent, and I've heard people say, "Oh, look, the running back is now back in the NFL," and I don't believe that's necessarily true. What I believe is what is always the case, and that's talent. Talent always finds a way to rise to the occasion, no matter what position and where it is. And Saquon Barkley is a special talent, and he's a guy that they figured out how to how to be explosive. And coaches in the NFL, they don't care. Like, they're just like, wherever I can find production, wherever I can move the ball, wherever I can have a mismatch, that's where I'm going to go. And they have that ability. And part of it is Jalen Hurts is a guy that can run as well as throw the football. And so there's just an honest factor with him in the game. And you kind of saw that where they really played off of each other so nicely. And so they're going to be tough offensively. And they've been there before. And so they're not, this moment isn't bigger than them. For the Eagles, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for Kansas City to actually win this game.
I always roll my eyes when I hear people say, well, the running back position is dead or the center position is dead in basketball. Like,
Right.
for a long time, everybody's saying, well, if you do not have a 6'7", 6'8" wing, dominant wing in pro basketball, you can't win a championship. Small players, point guards don't move the needle. And then Steph Curry was like, oh, yeah. I mean, ultimately, the top end talent, you cannot blanket a position by saying this position is dead because the top end talent at any position, Scott, will always move the needle. Running back, right guard, whatever it is. If you can have top end talent, then all the conversation about a positional group being dead is just dumb.
No, it really is, and it's a great point. I mean, these athletes can't go. Excuse me for being this body type or being
Right.
this position type, and it's just how it is in the NFL, and they just find a way that talent, and I'm sure the same thing is the case in the NBA. You think of Michael Jordan coming along, and like they'd never seen a player like Michael Jordan, and now you see a lot of players like that, and Steph certainly, he kind of changed the whole dynamic of how the game's played and the position, and it's really about. I just remember early on in my career, and Gene Upshaw, who was the president of the Players Association, and they were trying to ratify this whole idea of free agency. And he just said, "There's always going to be stars there, and they're going to come from all different kinds of places and positions, but there's always going to be stars. And this league ultimately is driven by those stars, wherever they come from. And the league knows this. They're going to promote the heck out of whoever is that star, and they don't care what position it is. I mean, you look at a guy like Taysom Hill, undrafted." But just the guy has talent, and they figured out how to put him on the field. And quite frankly, Jalen Hurts, who's in the Super Bowl, was initially drafted because the Philadelphia Eagles thought he was the next iteration of Taysom Hill. They drafted him to be kind of that specialized Swiss Army knife guy, and lo and behold, he actually turns into a quarterback, and Taysom Hill didn't. So the talent is one of those things. Puka Nacua, who's one of the top receivers in the NFL, it's because he's good, and so there's always a place, there's always a position. I think another guy who's done that is Belichick, and you get some of these, Wes Welkers or Julian Edelmans, and they go, those guys are undersized, they can't play, and they go, no, they can. You put them in the middle of the field here and let their talent shine, and they'll get open and they'll catch the heck out of the football, and they'll make your offense so much more explosive and dynamic and productive. But again, the NFL will find whatever nook and cranny, whatever position, whatever uniqueness it is. If you can play, you will stay.
Let me ask you. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Just stay tuned. 1 to 2 on our sister station coming soon, the Power Hour with Scott Mitchell. Since I asked you about Jaden Daniels last week, let me dig into your thoughts on Jalen Hurts. So Philadelphia last year, only Carolina, Chicago, and New England had fewer passing yards per game. Jalen was number 10 in QBR. He's the last ranked quarterback of any qualified quarterbacks in the postseason in QBR. But for some reason, I still really like him. I feel like maybe I'm on an island here, but it's interesting that we have a team in the Super Bowl where the coach is in question and the quarterback is in question, thought to be the two most important pieces of pro football. But what do you like about Jalen, and what bugs you as somebody who played that position?
Well, I don't like Jalen Hurts. I love him, actually, and I'll tell you why. Here's a guy who went to Alabama, leads them to a national championship, goes back and gets benched in the national championship game for Tua, and then stays. Doesn't transfer, doesn't pout, doesn't complain, takes his medicine, finishes out, and then goes to Oklahoma as a grad transfer, and really turns it around because Jalen was not a good passer. And then he goes to the NFL, and he goes, as I said earlier, as this novelty. And then he kind of converted himself into a guy who could actually throw. And to me, it was really remarkable because I really did think he was going to be like a Taysom Hill where he couldn't really throw that well, and there are people that say maybe he still can't do it. But the guys, why I love him is because he stuck through all of that stuff. He looked at where he was weak, and he figured out how to make it actually a strength of his. And he's a winner. He's been a winner. He's a guy. I like these guys that have kind of been through some stuff and got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, and I just feel like he's kind of that guy that. Like, don't count me out, and the worst thing you could ever do is like tell me that I'm no good, because I'm gonna prove you wrong, and that grit and that toughness is part of why this team is in the Super Bowl and why they're there and why they can win it. And he's got enough around him as a whole football team that he doesn't have to be Josh Allen. He doesn't have to be this superstar guy by himself. He's he having a second fiddle in Saquon is probably been a huge benefit to him. And I just wouldn't count out Jalen Hurts at all.
Speaking of Josh Allen, let's go over to the AFC Championship game. And on Friday of last week, I said, I'm riding with the Bills. It feels like it's Josh's time, but I fully anticipate sitting on my couch on Sunday evening going, you idiot, what are you doing? And that's what happened. So your takeaways of Kansas City, just doing Kansas City things, finding ways to win, and what's your take now on yet another exit from Josh Allen and the narrative around him moving forward?
It's a tough one, and it's tough because Josh actually played pretty decent, in the game, but you could just tell that anchor's still around his neck. You could see when the game got close, or they'd show visions of him on the sideline. Most guys are like stone faced. They don't give you any expression, and you could just feel the worry or the like, oh my goodness, here this goes again kind of thing, and it kind of impacts your ability to play, because that last drive when they just really needed it, whether it was calling plays or what they were doing. It was playing kind of small, almost tentative. Kansas City goes, look, there were two different plays in two critical situations. One where Patrick Mahomes rolls out and actually runs for the first down. And then there was another play it's a zone and a man concept. And something that they called probably a million times, and he throws the ball back out of the backfield, and it's the clincher. And Andy Reid's talked about this, and every play they have these plays, for those situations, like unveil your best play in that critical situation, and one that's and instead of let's just run our quarterback for a quarterback sneak 3 or 4 times. And so I think in order for Josh Allen to get over that hump, there's got to be more play to win, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. You got to be more bold and more creative in some of the things they're actually doing, and hopefully it will, because he's a really good talent, and they're a really good team, and they're really close, and it's just unfortunate you have to play Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes at their very best. That's hard to get over.
Speaking of that, we'll move over now to Super Bowl 59, Caesars Superdome, New Orleans, Louisiana, and it's a rematch of a game a couple years ago that felt like Philly was on their way, and then Kansas City, they did what they do. They came back and they won it again. Kansas City is a slight favorite. I thought this line would move, and it hasn't at all. For 72 hours now, it's the Chiefs minus 1.5. The over-under is 49.5. What's your gut tell you, Scott, about this game coming up on Sunday the 9th?
And I'm sure that slight advantage is just because of the experience of Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and they just understand. It's almost like they just expect to be there, and this is just normal territory for them. Winning a Super Bowl is really hard, and winning a second one is harder, probably the hardest thing to do. And now the third one is, it's kind of house money. It's like, who cares at this point? So I don't think there's any pressure on Kansas City extra. I know a lot of people are going to make a big deal about a three-peat because, it's never been done in football. But I just don't think it's really gonna bother them. Both of these teams are pretty complete, on both sides of the ball, and I just feel it's going to be a good game. I don't think anyone's going to get blown out of this game. I don't think the Eagles are going to be like overwhelmed, or intimidated or anything like that. I feel like there's energy and, gas still in the tank for the Chiefs, because that's an emotional thing to go through and win 17 games in a row, not just 17, but in a row by one score or less. That just kind of, after a while gets on your nerve. You think of that old gunslinger, he's been in that gunfight so many times that now he just kind of has this little tremble to him, or Saving Private Ryan, after a while you get the yips, the nerves they just take over, and it doesn't feel that way for the Chiefs. They feel like, cool, we got a chance to win. We know how to do this at the end of the game, and they do it. And so I feel like something in me just says this is going to be just a really good football game, and something that a lot of people will win. And I really think it's just going to come down to, at the end of the game, who manages it best, and who can find that way to just get that drive, that one drive late in the game that seals the deal. That's what I really think this whole game is going to come down to.
All right, Scott, before I set you loose, get ready. The way too early 2025, 2026, 12-team CFP projection from Bill Conley of ESPN with his SP Plus data. And out of the Big 12, representing the conference, according to Bill Conley, is the University of Utah in the 12-team CFP next year. Give me a Scott Mitchell hot take on that.
Well, the cupboards weren't bare. I think it felt that way. I mean, it was just a painful season. Utah was in every game, pretty much, even the Colorado game that got away from them in the end. It was a winnable game until, they just kind of could get nothing going offensively. So you have a defense that's going to be good. It was really good last year. It's going to be as good, if not better, again this year. And then you just add some offense. Just find some production offensively. And I really like Jason Beck. I've had a chance to talk to him, quite extensively actually, and I like what he's all about. I like his style, his philosophy, and Coach Whittingham is putting him in a position to really implement what he knows, what he believes, and he's got his quarterback that he believes. So there's not, even though that you have these new players coming into the program offensively, they're not new to what's going to be going on. So you're not going to have that longer learning curve that you would if you just brought a bunch of athletes in off the street and they go, okay, we're going to, you're way ahead when the quarterback knows the offense very well, and then these other people can come along, and there's some players offensively. They have some weapons. They're going to play to who they are and what their strengths are. And the Utah gets any kind of offense next year, they're definitely going to be competitive and can win every single game they play in next year. So I don't think it's that far-fetched, actually.
All right. I love it. Scott, thanks for the time, buddy. Have a great week and weekend, and we'll get you on soon, okay?
All right. Love it.
All right, Scott Mitchell. Before we catch a break, I want to tell you about my friends at Prize Picks, best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. You can run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Now, the big game is almost here. It's now or never. Don't miss out on the last football game of the season with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the big game. Prize Picks is also giving away a free pick for the big game where one starting quarterback will only need to throw for 1 yard for you to win a square. Now, remember, you only need to win 2 squares to win cash, so they're giving you one for the big game. You can win real cash. Check out the promos tab prior to the big game to tail any of the Super Sweat Millie Winners big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promotional funds. So giving away free money. Might as well grab it and then use it for the big football game coming up. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game all season long. All right, time for your chance to win tickets for the Utah men's basketball game coming up against Colorado. Text Utes right now to 33986. That's Utes to 33986 for your chance to win. All right, John Paul, JP Chunga is going to join us coming up a little bit, but we have a surprise guest coming up to make your Valentine's Day experience a home run. If you're wondering what to get your wife, your girlfriend, your significant other, stay tuned. We're going to tell you about it coming up on the other side on a Thursday right here on ESPN 700. All right, we're going to bring in John Paul. JP Chunga joins us coming up in just a little bit. We'll do a bunch of everything with JP. We'll get back to some college and pro football in the 5 o'clock hour. But do you feel that sunshine outside today? Do you feel that 40-degree sunshine outside today? Well, the consistent sunshine is on its way. And if you are like me, and if you get out as much as you can to play golf, you have a dog, you like to go hiking, you like to get out and go mountain biking, well, you have a tremendous amount of sun exposure that, quite frankly, is dangerous. Even though we all love it, it's dangerous if you don't stay on top of it. Now, we have a new client on the show. They're friends of mine. It's Ogden Clinic, Hadley Dermatology. We have traded Jason for the smarter, better-looking, older dermatologist. It's Dr. Michael Hadley live in studio. Dr. Hadley, how are you, sir?
I'm great. Great to be here, Spence, and get to meet you in person and see your setup. Awesome.
I appreciate you coming in. So, like I said, and look, you play golf like I do, and you are like the foremost expert with this stuff in the state. So, early detection can literally save lives. Tell our listeners who are like us, they want to get out and play golf, they want to hike, they want to hang out at the lake, why it's dangerous to wait, and how they can come get checked at your spot.
I appreciate the question. I mean, as Utahns, we live in a great place to recreate. We love to be outdoors. We love to ski, like you say, hike, golf, you name it. Kids are running around playing soccer. All the things that we love about our state, unfortunately, come at a cost. And in particular, something that's a bit sobering, we are actually number one for incidence of melanoma in the nation.
I see. I didn't know that. That's
We're
wild.
more than double the national average.
Wow.
So you think, oh, California, Florida, Arizona, Texas. No, it's Utah. And people scratch their heads and say, well, why is that? And ultimately, it boils down to a variety of factors. Certainly, genetics, we're fair skin. We have a lot of sunny days. We're in a high desert. But the principal thing is altitude. Every 10,000 feet you go up, you increase the intensity of sun about 40%. So here in Salt Lake City, 4,500 feet. You know, up at Alta, you're over 8,000 feet. Park City, 6,000. So that comes at a cost, and that cost is, unfortunately, melanoma. Other cancers as well, basal cell, squamous cell cancers. So, yeah, I'm a dermatologist, but my specialty is a technique of removal when these cancers are diagnosed. I'm a Mohs surgeon, which is a technique where we use microscopes to get rid of them and that. But my message here is, don't wait for me. Get out, get checked out, do more prevention before you see me. And there's a number of things that we can talk about to limit you seeing me. I always joke with my patients, you don't want to see me. You want to see other guys first.
Sure, yeah.
Before you see me.
You're kind of the last stop. So let's get into some prevention stuff, and then we'll end with the deal you have for our listeners. Because every time I see Jason, he's like, dude, you're golfing all the time. You got to come see me. You got to come see Mike. And I need to get in. But before we get to the deal, how can people at least operate as safely as possible prior to seeing you the last stop?
I mean, it's the same stuff you probably always have been told, sunscreen. And when people ask me what the best sunscreen is, it boils down to the sunscreen that you use. Yeah, I have a lot of ideas of different types of blockers, physical blockers, zinc, titanium, etc. But I'd really prefer you just put something on, particularly where the sun is most intense. Hats, protection with clothing, etc. All those things are good. But I'd like to take it to another level. I think there are other things out there that science has now been showing us is very helpful with prevention. These would be what I would put into a category of topical potent antioxidants. These are products you can actually put on your skin that have been shown with good scientific data. There's over 55 peer-reviewed scientific studies validating that these things work. So you can put it on your face, especially where you're getting a lot of sun. As a golfer, I put it on daily. I joke with my patients, I don't know who my skin cancer surgeon's going to be, right? It's not going to be my brother.
Right.
No, I'm joking. He'd be great. But these are things that we can do in a more preventative manner, in addition to the things that we've heard about, to just take it to another level, given our climate.
Yeah.
We're in a really difficult place as far as skin cancer goes.
Excellent knowledge. Now, for our listeners that are listening to this and they're going, "Oh, I got to get in." If Spence is golfing, I'm golfing. We're hiking, and I got to get in because again, early detection. And look, I can attest to this because I had a brain tumor that we caught early, and luckily I was able to have surgery, and I lived when if I waited a few more months, I would have died. So let's help our listeners. Call to action. Come see you so they can get in front of this before it gets too bad. So what's the deal you have for our listeners?
The deal is to kind of get people on the antioxidant. We're going to give a 20% discount on our most potent topical antioxidant. It's a SkinCeuticals product. If they call the number, say that they heard it on the show, we'll give them that. And we'll also do a free skin analysis, which will essentially show them their damage and kind of get them a little bit more motivated, I would say, to use these sorts of products.
Okay, so there you go. 20% off the topical cream and then a free skin analysis, which is a big deal. I mean, you can go up there and just get checked out for free, but you have to call the number. Call it right now. Here it is, 801-657-5664. 801-657-5664. 801-657-5664. Call them right now or visit HadleyDermatology.com. Dr. Michael, great to see you, okay?
Great seeing you.
All right,
Thank
JP
you.
Chunga live in studio. Coming up next right here on ESPN 700. Good job, dude. You know, there are very few bands that are directly tied to one individual guest, but I think we have a branded War on Drugs guest. The bit continues. As one of the original founders of The Drive, the original producer of The Drive, still on the masthead, the Dylan Moskovitz of The Drive, now with our friends at the Jazz and the Royals. He's very busy. John Paul, JP Chunga, how are you, buddy?
So explain this to me.
Oh, here we go.
Okay.
Right off the top, huh?
I want to know.
Yeah.
When you tell guests a time,
Okay.
is it that time or is it 10 minutes later?
Well-
Should I build in a buffer next time I appear on the show?
Well, you're in the business. You know the business. Sometimes you have to pay the bills. And when a client shows up for an on-air hit, sometimes you have to bump my guy for about 10, 15 minutes.
So tomorrow's podcast, you can always get these podcasts, UtahJazz.com.
Uh-huh.
I talked to Tom Crean.
Nice.
If I told Tom, hey,
yeah.
I'll talk to you at 3 o'clock
Yeah.
and then not show up until 3:15,
Yeah.
do you think he'd be okay with it?
No, I think Tom would be rather upset.
I think so, too.
But if you explain to Tom that you did have to take 10 minutes to interview a client that's helping pay your bills, I think he might be understanding. And as somebody who's been in this business on that side of the glass, understanding how your salary is paid, I would imagine you have some empathy for me today.
How many Final Fours have you been to?
Fair enough. The answer is 0. How are you, pal? You're a busy guy these days. We got Stars play-by-play. We got Royals play-by-play coming up. Of course, all the pods. You're heading on a Jazz road trip. How are things?
It's tremendous. It's good to be busy. I know you are toiling in the content mines from 2 to 5?
No, it's 6 live, man.
6 o'clock.
Yeah, yep.
2 to 6 o'clock.
Not to mention 4 or 5 hours of prep prior, too.
That's true.
Yep.
And all the games that you watch.
Yep, grinding.
Because you're definitely not going to the games.
I've been to 5, and I told you I'm going to go to 10. So I'm halfway through, and we're about halfway done with the year. I'm on track to live up to my promise, young man.
We'll see about that. But it's good to be busy. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the foray with the Stars, who now have signed Isaiah Thomas for a second stint.
Mm-hmm.
I know there are few things in life that you love as much as Isaiah Thomas loves basketball. Like, the only comparison I think for you is Brooks Brothers, Vineyard Vines, Sperry's.
More of a J. Crew guy back in the day.
Crew.
But I did go through an Abercrombie and Fitch phase. That's now over. I do have a couple of Sperry's. But yes, basketball for Isaiah Thomas is fine Northeast wear for me. I understand what you're saying.
He loves this game.
He does.
And I've been able to be around him for both stints, and that comes out of him every time you talk to him.
Yeah.
And I think it's super refreshing in this time when you can be cynical about sports. You could say, I'm going to put on a poll on my Twitter. What should the Utah Hockey Club's name be? When you could be cynical about those things, you can know that there are real, pure people like Isaiah Thomas who actually love basketball, love playing it. Doesn't matter where they would play it. He will do it in the G League just to get his shot back in the NBA. And it's such a great show to put on for the fans who go to the Maverick Center, who watch the G League. And I'm privileged to be alongside that NBA journey for Isaiah Thomas.
Breaking news with the hockey club. Wasatch is out. Outlaws in. Outlaws Mammoth Hockey Club. As you give your email address to Qualtrics, what box will you be checking?
Well, I have to put a Twitter poll on X or whatever.
Just to see.
Just to see.
Yeah.
I have to update because they knocked out Outlaws. I like Outlaws.
You like Outlaws?
I like Outlaws.
Okay.
It's fun. It's a little West. You can own the West motif.
Okay.
And could yield a pretty cool mascot.
All right. So JP goes Outlaws. You know my take.
Hockey club.
Stick with the Utah Hockey Club, man. I actually like it. I think it's classy. Don't overthink it. I don't need some corny mascot. And the mascot doesn't have to be tied to the name. The Jazz mascot is a bear.
Yep.
You can do Utah Hockey Club. You can come up with the mascot. I like the colorways. I think the logo's nice. I like what it is. That's just me.
It's a bear in jeans sometimes.
Fair, yes. Does he still do the sled down the stairs thing, or is that now?
No.
Yeah,
No.
legal stepped in with that?
That is a bygone era of NBA mascotting.
Okay.
But one that I miss.
Yeah, if I'm with you.
And you can find on YouTube, I'm sure.
Speaking of the Stars, we had a little Cody Williams action, right? Looked pretty good.
He was awesome.
Yeah. So what was it like to call those games?
So the thing that I think people should realize when it comes to the G League, and I try to make sure I come across this in the broadcast, as much as the result matters, it doesn't. It doesn't matter the result. what matters is what the guys are going and doing, and if they're listening to coaching and getting the more time that they need to develop. So Cody Williams is an example. When he was with the Stars, this is a guy who at most in college shot 13 attempts from the field. He was getting that in the first half. So him getting the confidence to get out there, to show his skills, not play tentative, not play safe, because there were times during the season with the Jazz where he was playing safe, that with the Stars, you could just cut it loose, and you do it in front of tens of people, and that's a good thing, because you need to have the pressure, the world, the weight of being the 10th overall pick off your shoulders. You need to just play free. You didn't just go. And Cody Williams was able to do that with the Stars, and I'm sure he's going to get another stint as well. But the confidence piece has definitely shown out when he plays with the Stars.
How would you, articulate to the listenership what that level of competition really is? Because, Bronny goes down, he drops 30, 33. And what you want is your draft picks to go to the G League and be simply the best players. Mm-hmm. And I didn't see a ton of the Cody stuff, but I saw the numbers, and it looked like he did what they were hoping he was going to do. But it's not NBA competition. It is a lot of people trying to play for their jobs, trying to play for their lives, trying to get back in the league or trying to cut a paycheck. So as you've been watching it as the voice of the team now, what's the competition like?
Well, I think in the G, you see a lot of desperation, something you're familiar with.
Oh, yeah. Things don't happen to you. They happen for you.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that desperation as a driver, you're going up sometimes against Scala BCR, who, if you remember that name, 2016 first-round draft pick, he's trying to find a way in the league. Mm-hmm. Isaiah Thomas is trying to find a way in the league. They don't care where you're drafted. They don't care that Isaiah Collier is 28th overall, coming in out of USC, big guy. Who cares? They want to take you down. And in a game in the G League, Isaiah Collier went out there and did exactly what you were saying, which was be the best player on the floor, scored 36, did it confidently, shot the three, which is something that he needs to show at the NBA level. If he gets that shot, I think, you watch him with some of these passes with the Jazz as of late, he's going to be a pretty good point guard because he has that in his mentality and his wiring. This competition, this level, is one that tests how much you love the game, how much you want to be Isaiah Thomas, how much you want and accept assignments of playing at a lower level. Because it's summer leaguey, but more structured because these players have played a little more together. But also realize so many of these guys don't care where you came from, don't care what your draft position was. They're fighting for an NBA job, and executives are watching from all over the world, Europe, Australia, and executives in the NBA. Everybody's playing for a job out there.
Just got to text Will real quick. JP is using point guard to label players. Send. I thought it was positionless basketball.
Wow, you're tattletaling right now.
I just thought it was positionless. I didn't think we were supposed to use those terms with this team that is not your grandfather's Utah Jazz.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Isaiah Collier is a point guard.
He is, and he has lead guard tendencies that I don't think anybody else on the roster has. Yeah. I like him a lot more than I thought I was going to. I'm not going to lie.
So he was talking. I remember talking to him because I talk to him frequently.
Oh, nice. Is there a nickname that we have for Isaiah yet?
Really? You want a nickname? So you haven't been watching the G League broadcast?
I thought that's what we do.
Collier by his name.
Come on, man. Is that really it?
I think it's Zay. Everybody calls him Zay.
Did you just make that up?
Come on. I'm doing radio here, Spence. Get on my level.
That's pretty good. No, but here's the thing. That's good, but it also tracks. I could totally see somebody, the Collier by her name. I could see somebody coming up with that and be like, hey, get Bowler on the line. This is what we're going with tonight.
Call your daddy.
Shout out to Trav. Do you mind if I do a read to pay some bills before we break? Is that okay with you?
Please, go ahead.
Thank you, because apparently, my gosh. All right, time for the PGA Tour leaderboard, AT&T Pebble Pro-Am going on right now, brought to you by Utah Golf. The new G440 driver delivers faster ball speeds along with Ping's game-changing forgiveness. Wow, that's good in golf and in life. There's a lesson there. The The G440 irons are designed for more distance and control at Uinta Golf, 560s, 2100 South. All right, Spyglass Hill Golf Club, Pebble Beach. Right now, Russell Henley is in the clubhouse after carding a 64. He's 8 under par. Jake Knapp, Justin Rose, Cam Davis, Lucas Glover, Victor Hovland, all at 7 under. Rory McIlroy, Justin Thomas, Lee Hodges, Shane Lowry at 6 under par. Scotty Scheffler, 5 under par, as is Taylor Pendrith. And Tony Finau with a strong finish at 5 under as well. All right, more with John Paul live in studio coming up next right here on ESPN 700. JP, Wonderkin's rising star, bright shining star, busy boy, is live in the studio, former producer of this program, former producer here at ESPN 700. How often do you think back and say, man, I wish I was still at Broadway. I wish I was still doing afternoon drive producing. That has to be a thought that pops in your head a lot.
I think about it.
Yeah.
Often, I can't say that's the case.
But you do think about it.
I think about it.
You miss us, don't you?
I do miss the place. The people were great.
Yeah.
The relationships you make along the way. It is true, I miss Jan Brownstein.
Jan's still
I
doing
know.
her thing, Real Golf Radio. Is that what they call it? Utah Golf Radio. Sorry, shout out to BT on the other station. Utah Golf Radio every Saturday. Jan and my guy Pugs.
But seeing Jan here at the office, seeing the people who work around here, Big Game James.
Our guy, PD.
I know, exactly. I remember when he interned here, when he was
Yeah.
a part-timer, and now he's
Dreams-
running the place.
Dreams come true, John Paul.
It's cool. It's seeing careers grow, people grow, and, this place, you can have your dog in the studio now.
Yeah.
Change.
Yeah, single father. So Duke comes to work with me now. Is it kind of wild, the turnover here, though? Like you walk in and a lot of people that were here once upon a time very much are not. Half of the office is now gone.
It's a little interesting, but that's radio. I knew it
Sure
when
is,
when
yeah.
you get into it that sometimes things change, and the only thing that's constant is that. It's very much like the G League.
Look at you. Well done. Before we get back there, Crooksy.
Okay.
Look, we got to do a little bit of it, man. We have to do a little. We're here for the lads, you know that.
Sure.
And I
sure.
don't want to upset you. I don't do angry confrontational radio. You know that. That's not it's not part of the ethos of the show. So I don't want you to get angry. But single record points, single record goals scored, club records last year in a single season set, and they break it down piece by piece. What has this been like for you to witness?
Well, my heart broke when they got rid of the Moose.
Oh, no, I know.
That's when it officially broke.
Has it ever been the same since the Moose? I mean, let's be
It
honest.
hasn't.
Yeah, that's the
It
way I feel,
hasn't.
yeah.
And the heights that they reached last summer, Chicho being the MVP frontrunner, better than Messi.
Wow.
I know. I'll go ahead
Wow.
and say it. Now
That's
that
a viral soundbite right there.
I'm a little peeved that he's gone,
Yeah.
so I'll say better than Messi.
Okay.
The way they were playing, and then to see that player, that team, this organization dismantle it, it's unreal how much turnover there is in this team. And mind you, there was a flicker. Yeah, I was moved a little bit when Diego Luna got smacked in the face, and you see
Cole Hero.
him and Clayton Keller side by side. Sure, I got a little moved by that.
Yeah.
Poach shouting him out with Dunny.
My guy.
Okay,
Mm-hmm. Big balls.
I start thinking, hey, I can get back in. But then I realize how many people are gone, how the Moose isn't there, how it's just not the same anymore.
Yeah.
And for a team last summer where I go to the games, I sit in the fans, I'm amongst the people, I'm wearing a scarf like everybody else. The noise that would happen when Chicho was on the ball, it was deafening. The 20,000 at the Riot always sold out. I still call it the Riot.
I like it. It will always be the Riot, and it will always be sold out.
The sound that would come once he was on the ball was unlike anybody else, only comparable to the maestro Javier Morales.
Good pull.
And he's gone. So I don't know. They have to win me over this year, and they're going to have to do it from a studio calling games remotely.
Wait a second. Are you out on RSL this year?
They have to convince me.
Wow. This is big news. I mean, Big Gav is gone.
Gav's gone, yeah. He was supposed to be the future.
Ando.
In goal.
That's what I call him.
Ugh.
Anderson Julio. Ando shipped out. I don't know anything about any of these strikers. But at least the midfield is still dialed in. We got our guy, Emeka. Shout out Nate Bench. Apparently he's going to wear the captain's armband. Pobbs, my guy, joins the show yesterday to drop that little tidbit.
Wow.
So at least we have.
What a nugget.
Oh, and by the way, just so you know, goals by committee. Diogo.
Oh.
Lachlan.
Okay.
Dom. I call him Dom.
Uh-huh.
You can call him Mark Zook. I don't care. But I'm choosing, because this is how I live my life, to be glass half full. Goals by committee, not bemoaning players of the past.
I'm glad that the talking points have gotten out. Trey's written them up, handed them out to his lackeys in the media, and you're repeating them on air.
Do you disagree with the assertions?
Chicho was amazing last year. You need somebody to pour in the goals come playoff time, because even last time when I came on here, I was saying this is a playoff or bust team. This is the point that I'm going to. Show me in the playoffs postseason. Come on. I don't care, Daryl. It's the regular season. Maury time needs to get to the final, and they didn't.
As a fan and a student of the beautiful game internationally, Rafa Cabral, 35-year-old Brazilian keeper, rich in experience, leadership from the back, good with his feet, potential option to also wear the captain's armband. You got to be excited about what's in goal.
I'm glad that the email blast went out and you checked the inbox.
I read all my emails. Hockey Club, Jazz, Stars,
Sure.
RSL, you name it.
Okay.
You mentioned Glad. Let's move to the back line. RSL legend, club legend,
Homegrown.
Jay Glad, next to what I've heard is a calmer, more poised, grown-up version of Brian Vera. Right? We got Wonderkin's Alex Katranis on the left, a healthy competition on the right, feeding into a holding midfield group that features Nelson Palacio, Brian Ojeda, aforementioned Emeka Anelli, returning from injury, Vegas favorite for MLS Comeback Player of the Year, Pablo Ruiz.
So when Ben Simmons posts he's shooting threes in the summer with his trainer, do you come in and you say, can't wait. Can't wait. This is going to be a big year for the Australian Ben Simmons. He's going to expand his range. He's going to shoot jump shots.
We don't do a ton of Ben Simmons on the program,
Right.
but your
Okay.
point is well taken.
Okay, yeah.
So bottom line is you're out on RSL, and
For now.
they have to win you back.
They have to win me back. I'm open, available, but right now they do have to win me back.
Will you get emotional opening night MLS action after, of course, CONCACAF Champions Cup when RSL is at PayPal Park and the starting 9 for San Jose is one Chicho Arango? Will you get emotional?
Yes. Yes, I will.
Understand.
Bruce Arena on the other side as well. Big game Bruce, of course, because those guys gave me a lot of good times in my life with the U.S. men's national team and with Real Salt Lake. Now, neither connected to RSL.
Based off of what Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck were able to get for Gobert, which I call the haul, what's fair to say about what Kurt Schmidt did not get for Chicho Arango? I mean, if we're trading stars in Utah, we want a haul. We don't want to be had. What's fair to say about the RSL front office?
I think that they need to take a book out of Ainge and Zanuck and look for desperation. Desperate teams.
Yeah.
Phoenix, very desperate. They're like, we got to get draft picks to get Jimmy Butler and find somebody to take Bradley Beal, who nobody wants because he has a no-trade clause and the number's outstanding. So how about we trade 2031's first-round pick, a year where Devin Booker will be in his 30s if he stays in Phoenix.
And Durant is done.
And Durant is gone.
Beal's already done.
Desperation is the thing you need to traffic in if you're RSL. And I didn't see a desperate team with San Jose. I didn't see a desperate team that was clamoring for Chicho's services.
Is it time to say that this club belongs to Diego Luna, who I call Moon Man, by the way?
Because he's grown up.
Yeah, once upon a time, Moon Boy, I call him Moon Man. Is it Diego's club now?
So, again, when that picture showed up, him in Kells, I call him Kells.
Nice. I like that.
UHC, go Clubbers. So when that side-by-side happened, there was a flutter. My heart was tickled, but it wasn't enough to get me back on the club.
This is rough, man. You're a lifelong.
I know.
Mean, I have a picture of you on my phone of a young J.P. Chunga next to Jason Kreis, and then a mature, grown J.P. Chunga right outside of the studio with Jason Kreis after he was brought back to the club. You are what I call a lifer. And at this point, you're telling me that you're out until they bring you back in, Costanza style.
They do. They need to convince me, okay? It's like Big Cat. He was able to switch his allegiances from Boston to Chicago. I'm allowed to switch allegiances too. It's okay. It's fine.
Wait a second. Who would be your backup MLS team? Don't say it.
It's not that team.
Okay, good.
It's not that
It better
team.
not be that team.
Not that team.
Breaking hearts today.
Yeah. Messi.
You'd go Miami.
I'd go Miami.
Javier.
I'm a front runner. Yeah.
Javier.
Santi.
Yeah, his
Santi.
kid is killing it.
I was at training when little Santi would be practicing penalty kicks with a huge inflatable ball, playing aside as his dad was training with Jamison Olave and the entire crew. So, like, I go back with this team, and now I need to be convinced a little bit. But that's okay. Things wane. People can come back. It is the cycles of life.
Nate Bench would say that he thought you were a believer. That's what Bench would say.
I stand up on my feet.
Okay.
I do it.
Okay.
I was there.
Do you shout it out?
I shouted out.
Okay.
Believe me,
Okay.
I was freezing at the Eastern Conference final
Such a dumb league.
in Sandy, Utah,
Against New York.
against the New York Red Bulls.
Was it Ura off the post? I think it was Ura. Yeah, that's right. Good knowledge. All right, we'll get back to the Jazz in a moment because we have not talked about the deal, but let's do a little Royals as the voice of. So they finished last season like on fire.
Mm-hmm.
Can they start the way they finished and maybe be a playoff club this year?
Absolutely. The way that they were trending was a playoff team in the way that Jimmy Kuneratz was organizing the side. They have a bona fide star in Ali Sentnor, the last first overall pick in the NWSL draft. They did away with the draft, very forward thinking, so that they could have labor peace and keep this league going in the NWSL. But if you're going to watch anything on the Utah Royals, it is that number 9, Ali Sentnor, because she is one of the best talents in all of American soccer. She got capped by the U.S. women's national team in England at Wembley before 70,000 people to take on England, recognized by the best coach in the entire world, Emma Hayes. She coaches the U.S. women's national team. She has acknowledged how good Ali Sentnor can be, and she's just 20 years old. So you're going to get in on the very ground floor of the war on drugs. You're going to see them when they're playing clubs, much like you did.
Thank you.
When you saw them at Urban Lounge.
Thank you. Finally, a little admission. I have a T-shirt. You don't.
The way you speak about that day is the way that people will speak about Ali Sentnor, because she has so much talent, a rocket of a shot. She was the U.S. Young Female Player of the Year and fully deserving because of how talented she is. She can shoot from distance. She can finish inside the box. And because of the way that they played last year, 5 wins down the stretch, they can do even more with Ali Sentnor unleashed this season.
RSL.com for both RSL and Royals tickets. You can hear our guy John Paul on the call. All right, with the time we have left, we'll do a little Jazz. We'll get back to the Jazz. Walker. All right. One of my favorite things. It's not just what he's done when he's played. It's the way they look when he doesn't play. It's such a massive difference. And obviously, you go from Walker Kessler to Drew Eubanks and a young Kyle Filipowski or what have you. It's going to be a little bit of a difference. We were talking about the Gobert deal. Walker, of course, Minnesota takes him 22nd. He's part of that deal. He lands here. We know the deal. Year 1, awesome. Year 2, not so much. Year 3, this to me is the A-plus Jazz story of the year. They're not going to trade him. Sorry, Jake Fisher, whoever else is writing about it. Like, that to me is a hang-up unless you get blown away. But nobody is going to, I think, step up to give Danny and Justin what they would want for this young player that's still on his rookie deal. So what have you seen from him when he has been playing, and then the difference between this team when they have Walker on the floor and then when he's sitting?
He's been awesome. Awesome this year, the physicality that he's playing with, taking the challenge of a struggling year 2, being Mr. America. that had to have driven the show a couple days.
Was that the narrative when he played for Team USA and couldn't get off the bench? Or
No. I'm talking about Miss America.
oh,
Come on.
I apologize. I thought you meant his Team USA basketball experience.
No.
Yeah, I'm not
no.
really into those types of storylines, but hey, whatever sells, whatever plays. Real Housewives of Salt Lake City stuff over here.
You're not watching?
I only watch for a Coach Shaw pep talk, and that's not part of the deal anymore, so I'm out.
Well, it seemed like Walker Kessler got a Coach Shaw pep talk this season because he's been lit on fire. Every time he's around the rim, he's affecting shots. He's deterring people at the rim from attacking him. You see the shot chart bend. If you want to see the impact of what Walker Kessler has on the Utah Jazz, check a game where he's in the shot chart, check a game when he's not there, and check that shot chart because it is drastically different. The shots, the green dots that you see at the rim, more than when Walker's not there. Less of them X's that are red when he is there.
Are you really watching Real Housewives of Salt Lake City?
Somebody has to.
Is it season 3?
I think so.
I tapped out after season 1.
Okay.
I might have to get back on board. Do you know the origin story of Walker meeting Abby Stocker, the current Miss America?
Yeah, I do.
Let's hear it.
It's Bruce Pearl. Bruce was the guy that connected them because Walker's mom noticed a striking young woman who is an Auburn, dance team or cheerleader, and she says to Walker, "Hey, Walk, looks pretty nice over there." Walker, the bashful one, isn't going to say anything, but a couple weeks later, Walk's mom goes over, asks Bruce Pearl, "Hey, who is that gal?" Bruce finds out, gives the number over to Walker's mom, transfers Walker's mom to Walker, and match made in heaven.
How tall is she?
I think she's pretty normally sized.
5'4", 5'5".
Yeah.
And he's 7'1", 7'2".
Yeah.
Well, Big Dave, your guy, my dad, 6'6", Deb, 5'2".
Yeah.
Used to the gap in height. So shout out to Abby, Miss USA. Shout out to Walker. Having a great year. All right, you referenced in passing the deal the Jazz made with Phoenix. Now, initially, I think a lot of people are like, okay, what exactly are we doing here? And then you dig into it, and obviously they've done their calculation on Cleveland, and they're like, yep, they're good this year, going to be good for a while. The least favorable of the three, probably the Cavs, certainly this year, 2 years from now, and then 4 years from now we'll see, but it's still the least favorable, so I would guess it's in the 20s. You send 3 picks, most likely in the 20s, to Phoenix, and the off chance that they're pivoting in 2031. And if you look at their roster right now, it appears that that's a good bet. Now, they do have an owner that likes to spend, and maybe he goes all in every single year just to try to – and look, it's not a good approach. The super team thing didn't work in Brooklyn. It's not working in Phoenix. But what's your reaction to what Justin and Danny decided to do, consolidating some picks for a really good value pick on the market in 2031?
But yeah, the point is that they're getting something that could be a lottery pick. It's completely unprotected.
Which is a unicorn in the NBA these days.
It's rare that you get that in the Lakers pick, which is lightly protected. I think,
top 4.
Yeah, top 4.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that you can still have a lottery-bound pick from the Lakers, betting against 2 teams that get desperate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would be prudent for the Lakers not to do anything at the deadline because this team isn't going to win a championship either way. But besides that, the Phoenix situation, sensing the desperation of a team that will continually spend, but what is it getting you? At some point, they're going to have to pull the plug on this team. Mm-hmm. At some point. Yeah. Because right now, mediocre results. You're not in the top 6. You're not a threatening team to the top squads in the West. You think that team's going to win 4 rounds?
No way.
In the playoffs.
They're
Nevertheless, 2.
Yeah.
I don't think they win 2 rounds.
No chance.
There's no chance that they do that. So unless Matt Ishbia is an owner who just likes writing checks and continually getting mediocre results, they are going to have to, at some point, reset things and go for the rebuilding route of the NBA, which is to build through the draft, to lose a bunch, to have to take your medicine at some point. And right now, they haven't really done that. The big hit on their draft pick is Ryan Dunn. The other guy, Oso Ighodaro, you of course know this.
Obviously.
He played against the Salt Lake City Stars on Tuesday, getting a G League assignment, but he's not in the rotation.
Right.
They don't have ways to improve this team other than trading Bradley Beal, and nobody wants Bradley Beal.
Yeah.
So they're stuck. Betting against them is a wise move, and getting that 2031 unprotected pick is a big coup for Ainge and Zanuck.
Well, especially in the era of the second apron that, as you know, is punitive.
I've heard. I read Bobby Marks. Yeah, I read Bobby Marks.
Who doesn't?
I wake up and I think about Bobby Marks. I'm like, whew. Oh my gosh, what is the former assistant general manager for the New Jersey Nets doing right now?
Punitive.
Yeah.
That's punitive. All right, before I set you loose, go Bear. Rudy, back in the building tonight. Oh, by the way, is Walker playing?
I believe he is.
Okay, good. So that'll be fun to watch those two go head-to-head. As Rudy rolls into town, it's just a fun way to reminisce about what it was like to watch him grow. And, you know, Dennis Lindsay joined the show right after they drafted him. And the term he used, I'll never forget it. He said he was treated like a circus freak at the combine. People didn't know what to do with him, you know, and you kind of felt bad for him because he was like over in the corner, like this big lanky guy who really didn't have a great feel for anything, if we're honest, like couldn't even get up and down the floor, wasn't coordinated with the basketball. He's one of the great success stories of this franchise. You know, he evolves into Defensive Player of the Year, All-Star, and loved it here, wanted to stay here, and I was always a big Rudy guy. You know, we've talked about it. So as he rolls into the building tonight, how should Jazz fans remember the big fella playing for the Timberwolves now?
As a true franchise legend, buying into the program, one of the best moments of Quinn's development history is seeing him become what he became. And I think back to a game, maybe his first year, where they're going against the Process Sixers, and Jeremy Grant is pushing him around in the post. Jeremy Grant. And at that point, Jeremy Grant wasn't even NBA ready. He was just coming straight out of Syracuse and pushing around this 7-footer. And then to think back on that guy to where now he's posting pictures of himself shirtless because he's become an Adonis, that's hard work. That's true love of the game stuff. Those are the guys you want to bet on. And for the Jazz to have bet on Rudy Gobert with that draft pick, wearing the number 27 because he felt slighted to be picked there because all these people have doubted him day after day after day, not thinking this kid from France could make it in the NBA. And to see that he's become a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, a franchise staple in 2 places, it's a real credit to him, and fans here should appreciate what he gave for the franchise. And
I still hate the way he's treated around the league. I think it's so lame. But anyway, all right, so good.
It was that's the other thing, like the Rudy Anon being a part of like the cult of defending Rudy online, also pretty fun because people don't agree with you and you get to be mad all day.
Right.
I think it's like a healthy outlet for sports hate, and knowing that the world's against you, you can play a little black hat action. I like that. I enjoyed that he kind of fed into it. The beef with Shaq. Oh, come on.
Yeah.
It was perfect sports fodder. And I think Rudy, because he attracts this hate from people, is a funny guy to see in the NBA and see all the success that he's gotten. Very much deserved.
Indeed, I agree. Royals play-by-play, Stars play-by-play. Now let's talk about the pod. Before I set you loose, where can people go get all the Jazz podcasts?
UtahJazz.com. Next up, Tom Crean. He was on the call for Colorado BYU. So I want to get his thoughts on Yegor, a little KYU.
Okay.
You can use that on the show.
Thank you. I was looking for something with that.
Kevin Young, we're talking prospects. I also asked him about the Jazz's rookies because he recruited Isaiah Collier. He was at Georgia in that neck of the woods, tracked him. He stays connected to the game, a real basketball sicko. I know you are too.
Indeed.
And he's going to be on the podcast tomorrow. Make sure to check it out. Just look up the Utah Jazz Podcast Network. Anywhere you get your podcasts, I prefer Apple Podcasts, but you can use Spotify, you can use Stitcher, you can use anywhere you get your podcasts.
Grinder of tape, knower of ball, John Paul, always good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you.
All right, it's time now for the ESPN cash giveaway. Your chance to win $1,000 in cash in this nationwide contest. Text PARTY to to 508-777-1000. That's party to 508-777-1000 for a chance to win $1,000 in cash in this nationwide contest. Good luck from all of us at ESPN 700. Going to do a little sports court coming up on the other side, but before we catch a break, new year, new you, save some money and budget wisely with the Dish Pros. You can save money on your cable, on your internet, and your wireless. All you have to do is dial 801-424-DISH. What's going on, Ryan?
You know, this is such a great time to save money. At this time of year, you kind of just got to look at your expenses. What are you spending on your TV? What are you spending on your internet? What are you spending on your cell phone service? There's so many different options right now, and they're giving away a ton of free stuff for new customers. And this is really up to you. Do you want to take advantage of these deals, lower your bill, and get a bunch of free stuff? Right now, we've got this Dish offer where you get the 2-year promotion. The price is guaranteed not to change. Guys, with the rate increases we've seen as of late, guys, YouTube TV costs as much as Dish now. And we already know what's going to happen. They're going to do another rate increase and another one. It's going to be more expensive than how much Dish is right now. A year and a half down the road, it'll probably be a lot more. Call us up and take advantage of this. We got this offer where you get Netflix free for the next 2 years. Guys, that alone is worth $431. And this works if you already have Netflix. Especially works for you because you're already going to spend this money anyways. Call us up. We'll set you up with that. Plus dinner at JCW's. I've got fiber internet available between $30 to $45 a month. And this can actually work in a lot of areas. If you have your existing fiber, you can actually just switch providers and use the same fiber, just pay a lower bill and save, $20, $30 there. Save $40, $100+ on your TV. And also on the wireless side, we had a customer come in spending $350 on their Verizon bill. We switched them over to Boost. Boost is piggybacking on the biggest wireless provider in the nation, which the coverage is second to none in Utah. You can imagine who they are, the first letter of the alphabet. And guys, it's almost $150 a month cheaper. Plus, he got 2 brand new iPhone 16 Pros free with no trade-in. Call us up, take advantage of this, because these are the things we do. We save you money, get you the best price. Plus, even if Dish smells out a special pre-qual offer to you and you never saw it, we're going to check to see if it's there. And maybe there's also a big fat gift card with your name on it. We can hook you up too. We'll always take care of you, get you the best deal. You just got to call Dish Pros, 424-DISH, 801-424-DISH.
All right, Ryan from the Dish Professionals, little sports court coming up on the other side. We'll get back to the football on the 5. Keep it here on ESPN 700. It is Sports Court time. We do it every Thursday, right about now, with our good friends Garrett and Preston Handy from the law firm of Handy and Handy. Gentlemen, happy Thursday. How we doing?
Hey, Spence, how's it going?
All good here. Happy Thursday to you. Sun is shining a little bit, which is nice for a late January day, but let's get into it. So we've discussed this on the show with you, and I've also had a few guests on the show to talk about the lawsuit against Tony Finau. And I actually did not know this. It has been dismissed at the request of both parties. So an update that I actually didn't see. So fill us in here.
Yeah, when I saw the headline, Spence, I was like, dismissed. I was like, oh, crap, this is over. But the background is, for the listeners, everyone knows that Maloney Hola claims that back in about 2006, he entered into an agreement with the Finau family, Gipper Finau, who was kind of the phenom at the time, and Tony Finau and his dad, to fund training, golf lessons, camps, their entry fees on tour. In addition to that, he was paying insurance and different benefits to the family, and that was in the amount of about $600,000. In addition to that, he claims they had an agreement that he would get 20% of all of the earnings that these two golfers, the Finau brothers, earned in their career. And nobody had, a crystal ball to see what was going to happen. But as we know, Tony Finau has been wildly successful and one of the top players in the world and has earned a lot of money. So in comes Maloney Hola and says, hey, we had this agreement. And the Finaus, I guess, implicitly say, no, we didn't. So Maloney Hola sued the Finaus. And his claims were basically breach of contract. We had a contract, and also something that's called unjust enrichment, meaning that you got a value for something that you received. Well, this thing went through years of litigation, and we've talked about it probably half a dozen times on Sports Court. And one of the things we found out that the contract claim was dismissed because there was no written contract. And oral contracts can be upheld, but there was no written contract, and that was thrown out. But the claim for unjust enrichment remained. And we followed this, and it was set for actually an 8-day jury trial back in October. And the judge got sick, and then it was pushed to jury trial here in February. So here's where we are now. It says the case has been dismissed. And usually when I see dismissed, that means it's over. But it's a really interesting twist that both parties entered into an agreement to have the judge dismiss it, and they did it what's called dismissed without prejudice, because that means you can refile, and I don't know how that plays into the statute of limitations. There's a relation back doctrine, but what Maloney's group has said, we're afraid to go to trial without all of our claims. We're not afraid. We don't want to. We want to they're going to appeal to the Utah Supreme Court and see if they can get these claims reinstated so they feel like their case is stronger. So all the parties have agreed to do that. So now what we're facing is an appeal. And I don't know if Garrett feels this way. I think usually an appeal, an interlocutory appeal, that's an appeal in the midst of a case is made while the case is still filed and still sitting on the court's docket. But here, this one's not on the court's docket anymore. So it's really interesting. So we haven't heard the last of this, and we'll see what happens on the appeal.
All right, Garrett, you're up, buddy.
Yeah, it is. Procedurally, it's kind of interesting and I think a little unusual what's happening. But, I mean, the other part of this, there's this $300,000 offer that apparently was made by Finau's side. And Hola said, hey, this is a slap in the face. And Finau's got, I think, $60 million so far in career earnings. So I would suspect it's going to take an offer that's in some millions for this thing to settle prior to trial. We thought we were going to be watching a trial here in February, but it's going to be postponed. It still could end up in a jury trial, though.
I did not finish law school like you, so forgive the follow-up. But what does the offer of $300K say to you? Either of you can answer that.
Oh, it says Finau's group is very bullish on their claims. One thing we learned is that Hola lost a couple of his experts. The court kicked them out on motions. And I know that's part of their appeal. I think they're just saying, you know what, we'll pay you $300,000 for this to go away, maybe in light of attorney's fees. I think they feel really bullish.
10-4. All right, moving over, Western Oregon women's basketball players allege physical and emotional abuse. This story just came down, I believe, yesterday or maybe today. So fill us in. What's the latest here?
Yeah, Western Oregon. What's I think really stands out to me is this is 9 of the women's basketball team players have filed this lawsuit, and it's against the university president, but really particularly against the 2 coaches, the head coach and the assistant coach. And this is a case where they're alleging physical and emotional abuse. But you really got to go back to last season to kind of understand what happened. By last February, the coach dismissed 10 of the 12 players from the women's basketball team and revoked their scholarships. And then there was an investigation into this, but this program and the season was cut short. The university just kind of ended the season. So this program's been in turmoil, but now we're kind of hearing the story, and part of what they're alleging, some of the damages they're alleging from the abuse that they're talking about is, panic attacks, weight and hair loss, eating disorders. They said they were berated by these coaches. They were called spoiled and weak and lazy. The coaches, confiscated their phones. And the other part of it is that just, was having them run laps, just as punishment, but kind of unending and just as a way to really beat them down and break them down. So, if it was one player or something, I think you could say, well, we've got, just a disgruntled player on this team. But for 9 players off of the same team, there's clearly something going on there at Western Oregon.
All right, Preston, you're up, bud.
Yeah, 2 things. One, the university hired an outside law firm to look into this, and they came and said that a comprehensive fact-finding investigation, they found that they could not sustain these allegations against the coaches. They say, we recognize there's significant claims, but we think they're unfounded, and that's probably why it resulted in a lawsuit. And the other thing that jumped out at me is, wow, coaches that ran you too hard till you really got sick, and they called you things, and I'm wondering if I can bring claims against my high school and college coaches now, but I think they're passed away, so I'm probably out of luck.
All right, moving over the world of college football, Nizer Forkurine, I believe is how you say the name, sued the NCAA on Wednesday, alleging his 5-year eligibility clock should not have been running during his 2 seasons when he played D2 football at Grand Valley State. I thought we'd see more of these gentlemen. What's the latest here?
Yeah, so this should be entitled, Thank You, Diego Pavia.
Yep.
Where we remember the case at Vandy, the quarterback at Vandy who, and I think there's a distinction, and I'll talk about it. He played junior college football, and he bounced around a little bit and then ended up at Vanderbilt, and he wanted an extra year of eligibility, and the NCAA said, nope, you're out. You've played your years. And so he filed an antitrust suit basically saying, hey, wait a minute, junior colleges are not under the control of NCAA, and so you're not in control of this. And then he filed an antitrust Sherman Act claim, and that's exactly what our guy's doing now here. And his claim is, again, that he shouldn't be out of eligibility. He should be able to play a year. And I think there's a funny statement in here basically saying, like, why should you have any limit to eligibility? And what this is coming out of, Spence, is athletes' opportunity to earn NIL money. And he's claiming that his inability to play another year is in violation of the Antitrust Act because he can't its competitive sense and earn NIL money. And I think the distinction here is he played at a D2 school versus a D1 school. He played there for a couple of years and used his eligibility, and then went to Wisconsin and used all of his eligibility, which probably included a fifth-year senior year. So I think his claim is the same, and in the end I think he'll probably win because what they've asked for now is a preliminary injunction and a temporary restraining order saying that the NCAA cannot enforce that rule, and that's the same thing that Diego did. But I don't think he has the argument that D2 is not under the control of the NCAA, so we'll see what happens.
Garrett, over to you, buddy.
Yeah, I agree with Preston. I don't know that it's quite as strong a case. I mean, what's the difference between somebody else playing D1 football at a school where they're not making any NIL money and then entering the transfer portal and going to a bigger school and making some NIL money and then saying, hey, I should get a few more years to make more money. And so no longer, I guess, are these eligibility years tied to education or anything like that. It seems like it's just about, hey, I should have an opportunity to make more money and have more time to do that.
All right, moving over, a lawsuit filed by, it looks like, Dwayne Haskins' mother and sister, parents and his sister, against his widow over the use of his name, image, and likeness, I guess, is how I'm reading this. What's the latest with this one?
Yeah, this is another NIL case in a way, right? I mean, we're talking about Dwayne Haskins, the NIL rights after his death. And so if everybody remembers, I mean, he was, tragically struck and killed by a truck in 2022 in Fort Lauderdale, not long after being drafted in the NFL. Spent a few seasons in the league. And, life cut short. But there's been a dispute now, sounds like a rift between his parents and his sister in particular versus Dwayne Haskins' widow. I mean, he just married shortly before he was killed, and even it sounds like the family didn't even really know about the wedding. I don't know, they eloped or something and weren't involved at the wedding. And so this widow's trying to, it sounds like, control the story a little bit, the narrative surrounding Dwayne Haskins' name, likeness, and image, and is trying to cut the family out of, kick them off of Instagram, things like that, about talking about it. And so the parents and the sister, the family, apparently they're in the midst of creating a documentary about Dwayne Haskins' life, and that documentary is going to come out, and they're worried that the widow is going to torpedo this documentary, right? And so they've filed a lawsuit, and the lawsuit was dismissed, and the issue here is the judge said that the case wasn't right. And when we talk about that in a legal setting, it's basically that, hey, you brought these claims, and it may be true, but your claims really haven't developed to a point where we can rule on those. And so the judge is just saying, until you actually, release the documentary and she does disparage the documentary, you really don't have a case. I mean, it's too speculative at this point. So I don't think we've seen the end of the dispute, but for now it's been dismissed.
Over to you, Preston. Your turn, buddy.
Yeah, just, they're jumping the gun, really. They're thinking, oh, she's going to give us a hassle. And apparently they did send her a cease and desist letter basically saying, stop hassling us about these NIL things, posting things on Instagram on his birthday and that type of thing. So they were just anticipating it. And the likelihood is maybe she will do something, try to block the documentary and saying that she has the rights to his NIL. We'll see what happens, but it's too soon, so they're kicked out.
Final one for today. It's a local story. This actually broke during our show during the 5 o'clock hour, as the Utah Hockey Club has struck out with their quest to trademark Yeti. So we now know that was their preferred name, but that's off the table. And 3 finalists now, and actually it was updated not too long ago. The Utah Outlaws is now an option. The Utah Wasatch is no longer an option, along with the Utah Mammoth and the Utah Hockey Club. You're the experts. What went down here? How'd this happen?
Okay, I mean, we've talked about this trademark stuff, and what happened was when the hockey club came to Utah, the Smith Entertainment Group, the owners, they filed a bunch of trademarks with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, and one of them, I mean, they had a list of them, and one of them was for the Utah Yetis, and so they filed it, and it wasn't named, but someone basically opposed it, and clearly it was the cooler and baggage type group, the owner, Yeti. They came in and said, whoever did came in and said, the concern is this will prevent buyer confusion as to the source of goods and services, but to protect registrant. And that's why they do it. You don't want, Yeti puts their name all over all kinds of things. And then if we had the Utah Yeti, you'd see jerseys and mugs and everything that comes along with that licensing. And so it wasn't denied yet, but the Smith Entertainment Group came out with a statement, and they were reading the writing on the wall and said, yeah, we can see what's going to happen here. And there might even be something that the Yeti is even a sponsor in some of the hockey with an NHL, that they might even be that close to it. But so they backed off that, and now they've got it out for a vote. Isn't that right, Spence? There's an out for a vote for these other names.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of Utah Hockey Club, and I'm kind of glad Yeti's not in there, but that was the leader in the clubhouse, apparently.
All right, Garrett, over to you, buddy.
Well, it is out for a vote. I think it's just a little on the nose that Ryan Smith's going to have the fans take an online survey to pick this, pick the name, I'm sure, powered by Qualtrics. So there you go.
That's exactly what this is. And if we're honest, it's not really a vote. It's thanks for the data. Then we'll do what we want. Anyway, before I set you loose, gentlemen, on this Thursday afternoon, for any of our listeners who have legal questions, how can they get a hold of you over at Handy and Handy?
Ryan Smith knows a little about surveys and
yes,
data.
Yes, he does. Yep.
Spence, we love coming on here with you and talking about these issues in the world, legal issues in the world of sports. We are a personal injury law firm. We help people that have been involved in accidents. We'd love to hear from you out there and talk with you. It won't cost you anything to talk with us. Give us a call at 801-264-6677 or visit our website at handylawyutah.com.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have an excellent weekend. And, of course, as always, go Utes.
Thanks, Spence. Go Utes.
Oh, we got one out of Garrett. There you go. The good people over there at Handy and Handy. Before we catch a break, it's time now for your PGA Tour Update Leaderboard, brought to you by our good friends at Uinta Golf. Now, Uinta Golf right now, their TaylorMade line, it's the new TaylorMade QI 35 Woods. They're the fourth generation of carbon wood technology. Their driver unlocks a new level of distance at Uinta Golf. Check them out at 560 East, 2100 South. Also locations in Sandy, Riverdale, and Orem. It's the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Going on right now, the Spy Glass Hill Golf Club at Pebble Beach. Russell Henley is your leader. All of the players in the clubhouse now, so a quick look at the notables. Russell Henley, 8 under par, is the leader. Justin Rose, Sepp Straka, also at 7 under. So is Victor Hovland. Rory McIlroy, who had an ace earlier today, is 6 under par, as is Justin Thomas. So is Patrick Cantlay and Shane Lowry. Lucas Glover, 5 under par as well. The number one golfer in the world is Scotty Scheffler. He's 5 under par, as is Sahith Theegala. Local boy Tony Finau, who we just talked about. Harris English, who won last week, at 4 under par as well. Nick Taylor finds himself at 4 under par. So does Ricky Fowler. Colin Morikawa at 3 under. This is a fun leaderboard, shaping up for a really fun weekend. Chris Kirk, 3 under par as well. Jordan Spieth, 2 under par, as is Will Zalatoris. So there you go. Wyndham Clark struggling today. He's the second to last golfer at 2 over. Ludwig Aberg is the last place golfer. Wow, 5 over par there. So there you go. All right. 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. We'll do the 5 o'clock hour of the drive coming up. So don't go anywhere. Keep it right here. Craig Smith Coaches Show at 6 o'clock on ESPN 700. All right, what's going on? Drive at 5 time. Your commute home on this Thursday afternoon gets rolling right now. It's been a sunny and warm January day as we are preparing to turn our calendars to February next week. Congratulations. Slow clap for everybody. Way to go. If you're anti-January like I am, this is a good week, final week of January. But we had about 42 degrees was the high today. It was sunny in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. We have not had a 40-plus degree day in quite some time. So offering a little hope, maybe sunshine on the way. Of course, plenty of months and weeks ahead of cold weather, but your commute home on a Thursday starts right now, and we appreciate you making us a part of your day today and every day. We've got the NFL Pro Bowl Skills Game Challenge tonight. Peyton and Eli Manning, tell you what, man, for a post-football career, those two have been able to really parlay some fun personalities into a lot of media opportunities. Looks like Terry Crews is your MC tonight. How much, Porter, of the NFL Skills Challenge Pro Bowl style action will you watch tonight on ESPN?
I am currently finding out that it's happening tonight, so
I'm with you. I actually had no idea.
That should kind of answer it. I mean, I'll probably see something of note on social media later.
I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know who's even involved. I don't know if NFL players give a rip if they're even in the Pro Bowl. I do think, you know what's interesting? They have it in contracts, which really probably should stop because I think Drake May is a Pro Bowler this year, all due respect, Russell Wilson as well. So the first skill challenge, right out of the gates is called passing the test. So each quarterback has 40 seconds. You earn an additional 10 seconds with each correct trivia answer. What? I guess they're asking quarterbacks trivia. So on the AFC side, you have Joe Burrow. That's kind of fun. Drake May, Russell Wilson. On the NFC side, you have Jared Goff, Sam Darnold, and Baker Mayfield. So if you are a football junkie, and I know a lot of you are, waiting for the Super Bowl 59 coming up on February the 9th down in the Big Easy in New Orleans, Philly, and KC. If you're just starving for football content, the worldwide leader has you covered tonight. It is passing the test, little skills challenge action for the Pro Bowl players in pro football. Little bit of breaking news on a Thursday afternoon. First of all, in case you missed it, the Utah Hockey Club has punted on the Utah Wasatch because it was a horrible idea in the first place. Utah Outlaws has now been brought to the table as a potential name for the Utah Hockey Club. So your final three, and if you are going to Utah Hockey Club home games, you have the option of going through the motions of pretending to vote, so you can give Qualtrics your email on the following three. The Utah Hockey Club, okay, the Utah Mammoth, and now the Utah Outlaws. The Utah Wasatch has been thrown aside. Porter, you were very anti-Utah Wasatch yesterday on the show. Are you a fan of the replacement option for the Utah Hockey Club, the Utah Outlaws?
Yeah, it's better. It's better. There's historical ties. I've been running the. I think out of these, I'm with Outlaws. I think you can go back to the original lists of 20 or so, and there were some that I liked a little better. But yeah, I mean, I've talked about the history of the Outlaws in this state and how that really does tie in. There are some connotations there that you may have to deal with in a branding segment, but I think that one gives you a good option for a mascot, a good option for logos, for branding, for apparel, for merch. I think Mammoth is fine in that direction as well. And we've already talked about the Utah Hockey Club, which is clean and a good logo, a good look to me. So although the process has been clunky, it has been messy, and I think it could have gone a lot better if you just handled a little bit more of it behind closed doors. Although all that is true, I think they've landed on three options that I'd go either way on any of them. I'm cool with them all.
Quick Google search of the most famous outlaw in the state of Utah brings up Butch Cassidy.
There we go.
And you might have a little.
guy.
You might have a little knowledge, I understand, potentially on the man born as Robert Leroy Parker.
Robert Leroy Parker, Circleville, Utah. Spencer.
Shout out. Hard shout out today.
Yeah, my third cousin, Mr. Butch Cassidy.
What?
So There's familial ties there.
Do you have any like cool Butch Cassidy paraphernalia or anything?
Not Butch Cassidy, but my
What
third
about
grade
the kid?
No.
Okay.
Like Kid Curry, is that who you're talking about?
No. Isn't it Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid?
The Sundance Kid.
Yeah.
Harvey Longabaugh, by the way.
Good knowledge. That's a deep pull.
Harry Longabaugh. So I was actually off.
Okay,
Sorry.
now you're bragging.
But yeah, I don't have his stuff, but my third great grandfather, who helped establish the Outlaw Trail, which is like a secret network of trails that go up through a good part of like northeast Utah and down into the desert. I do have some stuff from him, and Butch Cassidy used some of our family kind of outposts and cabins back in the day as well. So there's some cool history there.
So according to the Utah Education Network, shout out to them, big shout out on a Thursday, and a piece written by John D. Barton entitled Outlaws in Utah, because the pushback on this name is there aren't any outlaws in Utah right now, which, au contraire, shout out to our guy, The Bull.
Oh,
right? I mean, there are several outlaws in Utah County. They're stealing money from ward members and putting it in fake securities and claiming that they're trying to do good, and they go to jail for a while. There are a lot of those bros.
there are.
There are a lot of outlaws in our state.
That's an interesting tie to the outlaw name, but yeah, they're still around.
So according to our guy, John D. Barton, and the Utah Department of Education, Outlaws in Utah, Butch Cassidy, or as he was christened, Robert Leroy Parker, is the best known of Utah's outlaws, rivaling the fame of even Jesse James, Billy the Kid, Cassidy and his gang. The Wild Bunch were among the most successful of Western outlaws.
There you go. And I'd like to add, they targeted only banks, train barons.
Oh, now don't paint him as Robin Hood here.
And the rich.
This actually
take dead aim at the rich boys, Spence.
Hey, check out the Twitter profile. This actually, now that we're learning more about outlaws in Utah and the rich history, you might need to get involved to drop some knowledge on the people as to why this name actually works.
I am happy to get involved as far as the educational process. As you mentioned, we'll have a show and tell on old outlaw paraphernalia. I'm happy to do that, but yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can go with that branding, that nickname. So I'm on board with it, and I'll reserve my actual vote till I decide between the remaining.
Shout out to a lesser-known member of the gang named Henry Wilbur Meeks. Are you familiar with this young man?
Henry Wilbur Leeks. No LZ Lay mentions?
Well, I'm getting there. So Henry Wilbur Leeks was a former Mormon who latched on to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and his gang. He was from Wallsburg, Utah. Shout out to Wallsburg, where his father was a freighter named Harvey Logan, better known in gang circles as Kid Curry. He had come home from a small ranching family in Montana. Many other outlaws throughout the era had nothing extraordinary in their backgrounds. Most were from common backgrounds, and many became outlaws due to the conditions of the times. Some outlaws were careful from whom they stole, and at times shared with those in severe need with whom they came into contact, fostering the Robin Hood myth, though it must be remembered that it is only natural to rob from the rich. After all, they're the ones with the money worth stealing.
That is true.
This is according to our guy, John Bates, from the Utah Department of Education.
That is true. Harvey Logan. His brother, Lonnie Logan.
Shut up. Are you serious?
I do have a pretty good
I'm impressed.
depth of knowledge here.
I didn't mean to tell you to shut up. That was rude.
No, I mean, listen, we don't get into Outlaws of the West very often on the show.
Well, we have to now because our hockey team might be named the Utah Outlaws.
But yeah, I do like that you bring that up. Because there are very much, and rightfully so, there are plenty of negative connotations with outlaws. Just to be completely frank, westward expansion of white people joining this land, right? There's a lot of negative connotations. There's a lot of dark history there, but there are also pretty cool stories and some pretty fun ones mixed in.
Have you watched American Primeval on Netflix?
I started it. I saw some of it.
Is it any good?
It's really so it's done really well.
Okay.
The cinematography is awesome. The portrayals of characters are awesome. Like the grittiness you get from it is cool. And it follows the storyline, but my one beef with it is it's kind of purporting itself as documentary, while
Isn't it like a docudrama series?
right, but it's mixing in a lot. Like, the cities aren't real.
Okay.
The storyline is a little so my thing is someone from Utah who likes the history and studying it. There was a lot of inaccuracies, I'll say, but there was also a lot of good representation of how gritty that time was.
Our guy John D. Barton from the Utah, not the athletic department, the Utah Education Department continues as the Western Frontier. We're learning about outlaws, kids. Okay, so Sports Talk Radio today. We're in class because the Utah hockey team has now announced the Utah Outlaws as a potential name for the club. And so a lot of people online are saying, wait a second, this state doesn't have outlaws. Well, Porter knows that that's false. And so as we continue to learn about how this stuff kind of came down, as the West, including Utah, quote, grew up, it was developed by ranchers, miners, timbermen, the Army, and small farmers and homesteaders. The last group was particularly important to Utah because Brigham Young and his desire to see his followers pursue certain lifestyles. The disparity of wealth between the homesteader and larger interests usually was great, and those who had to live, quote, hand to mouth, uncertain of their next meal, often helped themselves to a small portion of the profits of the more fortunate. Others, through honest endeavors themselves, turned a blind eye to those who even things up even a little. Many, if not most, big ranches improved their start by branding strays or mavericks, and then, once large and prosperous, they condemned small-time operators who did likewise. This led to range wars, murders, and hostility. Large ranches might even sanction means to eliminate smaller competitors. Sounds like it was wild back then.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I call the Wild Wild West.
I mean, that's history that we've talked about it. My family was here in 1845. They were just out here ranching sheep, trying to mind their own business. At the time, Spence, this was Mexico, right? And, at a certain point, and we could talk about this in modern form, things reach a stage where the man who holds the gold maybe holds a little too much of the gold.
Too much of the golden rule?
And, it was putting, like, regular people who were just trying to mind their business and ranch in positions where they could not compete because of the way that farming was happening, factory farming. The start of kind of factory farming and giant corporations pushing farmers off their land, stealing their cattle. And back then it was tough to track. It was tough to find and prosecute. So they took stuff into their own hands.
This feels like the Utah Outlaw name is gaining some traction. Most Western outlaws identified with the common people. Backgrounds of some members of the Wild Bunch show easy identification with the small ranchers and farmers who were so common throughout the West. Our guy, Butch Cassidy. Can we call Butch Cassidy our guy because he's a family member of yours?
I think third cousin is close enough.
Yeah,
he's
okay.
our guy.
Can you get one of his direct descendants on the show? Like maybe a great-great-great-grandchild?
Good question.
If we're going to be the Outlaws. So our guy, Butch Cassidy, raised on a small ranch in southern Utah by Mormon parents. LZ Lay, originally from Ohio, had migrated west to Colorado. I had 20 minutes to prepare on Gobert, by the way. We'll get there.
That's okay.
Had migrated west to Colorado with his family. Then after a failed romance, sorry, Butch, hang in there. Choose love once again every time. That's Maya Angelou. Choose love one more time every time, Butch. Hang in there. After a failed romance, he drifted into his outlaw ways and infamy with the Wild Bunch. His mother was tall and slender. His father was a handsome man known for reading and being a top bronco rider and ranch hand, and had a way with women and horses. That dude sounds like John Dutton from Yellowstone. Not going to lie. So you mentioned Harry Longbaugh. Is that the Sundance Kid?
Harry Longabaugh, yes.
Longabaugh. Okay, so he was thought to be from Pennsylvania, where he claimed to be from, quote, a good family, lesser-known member of the gang. We already talked about our guy, Henry Wilbur Meeks. It sounds like, Porter, if we land on the Outlaws, the mascot should be Butch Cassidy.
In some form. I don't think it should be a certain person. Now, maybe based off of somebody. I am biased here, so I don't feel like I should step in. But if there's anyone that you're basing it off of, at least loosely, that's got to be one of the considerations.
Finally, the Outlaw Trail, which ran from Mexico to Canada, was comprised of key-friendly ranches coupled with hard-to-find hideouts.
Here we go.
Such as our guy Robber Roost and Browns Park, which ran through Utah's path. Here, the majority of the population was Mormon, And here the Outlaws' reception is especially peculiar. Mormons, for the most part, abhorred violence and crime, yet many outlaws were on friendly terms with local citizens. An explanation for this is possible through understanding Utah's economic situation of the late 1800s. Mormons had long been outcast themselves, socially, politically, and economically, and in the late 19th century suffered severe persecutions at the hand of the government over the practice of polygamy. This is a Sports Talk radio show. There's little wonder that Mormons felt resentment and distrust towards outside interests, whether government or big business, hence the birth of Butch Cassidy.
There you go. There you go.
I think we have our name.
Yeah. You're talking me into it, and I'm one that doesn't need to be talked too much into that one. So,
final piece, kids, final piece for today. An examination of the lives of most Western outlaws most likely would reveal a lifestyle of night riding, missed meals, hot pursuits, poorly tended wounds, broken friendships, and economic deprivation. They were usually broke or hiding, unable to spend stolen money. There was little glamour in the real lives of outlaws, our hockey team's name potentially. They experienced difficult family relations, long trails, and fear of treachery with the knowledge that, regardless of the cause, they were outlaws and anyone can turn them in for the reward money. Yet, it was reported, let's land the plane, that Utah's cowboy outlaws were often gentlemen in their manner, often outgoing and friendly. They posed little threat to the average citizen, and their selection of targets for robbery at times maintained an identification with the common people while becoming hated enemies of big business. These are socialists. These are cowboys. Okay? These are disruptors. These outlaws were products of the times and gained, if not the respect, at least the tolerance of their fellows and the near cult worship of today's Western history enthusiasts.
You went right through it all.
Period.
I love it.
Full stop. We learned a lot today on the program.
Oh, one more outlaw quick story.
Go ahead, bring it.
So you mentioned the Outlaw Trail there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My third great grandfather and his father, who were on the run from U.S. Marshals, that is why they were out here scouting land for the Mormon Church. They helped informally establish the Outlaw Trail. They hid those guys as they came through. You'll hear stories of them going through the Wasatch Back, Park City, Coville area while they were stopping at my family's property. There's still a cabin that kind of stands on one of our places where those guys would hide out in certain moments. But my third great grandfather, he actually published in the Deseret News in 1853 one of his trails that he had staked. It went from Salt Lake to what is now Lake Tahoe. But after he published that trail so that people could start using it, he waited on the trail with 4 Paiute Indians and robbed people as they came by, using the trail that he had published in the Deseret News, robbing the weary travelers who were then using his trail.
If you're going to rob the whites, bring the Paiutes.
I mean,
that's an excellent approach.
It's not a bad strategy. He taught them some English too, which I thought was interesting.
You know, it's wild. The more things change, the more they remain the same. And if you do not learn from history, you are what? Doomed to repeat it. The combination of corrupt politics, unfair banking and lending policies, laissez-faire economics, and unregulated business practices. Where does this sound familiar? I don't know. All serve to sharpen the distinction between the rich and those less fortunate. This is not 2025, but it might as well be. Known as social Darwinism, survivor of the fittest, in the jungle way of life, justified the wealthy and condemned the poor. As social classes based upon the wealth were established, small farmers and ranchers came to distrust, and often resent big business and politicians. So finally, okay, we'll land it here. Many law-abiding citizens took secret satisfaction in the fact that the outlaws were bloodying the nose of the rich. The robbery of a train payroll, a bank, or even a large mine had little, if any, effect on the small farmer and the rancher. That's 20 minutes on the history of outlaws in Utah, and I think
week's been made.
And I think we've landed on the new name of the hockey club. I seriously had 20 minutes ready for Gobert and Rudy and the Jazz.
Hey. I think we went in the right direction.
I like it. And you have knowledge that not many people around here do. We'll do a little Gobert maybe later on. Jazz are in action against Minnesota tonight. Yes, this is a Sports Talk radio show, but kids, we learned something today. We'll catch a break. We'll do some football with Scott Mitchell coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700. All right, wrapping it up. Thursday show, a little breaking news. I was going to talk about this early in the 5 o'clock hour, but we gave you a 25-minute history lesson of Outlaws in Utah. As the Outlaws, now one of the options for the Utah Hockey Club's name, the NBA All-Star Reserves have been announced, and there are no Jazz players. Nobody's surprised about that. So the East All-Star Reserves, Pascal Siakam, Jaylen Brown, Darius Garland, Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley, and Dame Lillard, as well as Tyler Hero. Out west, it's Anthony Edwards, Anthony Davis, James Harden, Jaren Jackson Jr., Alfred Şengün, Jalen Williams, and Victor Wembanyama. First-time All-Star, obviously, for Victor Wembanyama. So it's a different format. In case you guys even give a rip, you probably don't. NBA announcing the 14 All-Star reserves tonight. The game itself has a new format. The All-Stars are going to be split up into 3 teams, and Friday night's Rising Stars champion becomes the 4th entry into a 3-game mini tournament. And, of course, we'll find out who the starters were, and then they'll be split up into 3 teams as opposed to 2 in the past. So there you go. Jazz in action tonight, taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves. Rudy Gobert back in the building. We did not get to the Justin Tucker story. Justin Tucker's come out and said the therapist's allegations are false, but 6 massage therapists in the Baltimore area have accused Ravens kicker Justin Tucker of inappropriate behavior. Deshaun Watson, of course, was the pioneer with all this stuff. That's probably the wrong term, but gross. So there you go. All-Star reserves, Jazz in action tonight, and good NBA basketball tonight. It's kind of a light night. Utah men's hoops will be back in action against Oklahoma State coming up on Saturday. The Utah women welcome in Arizona coming up tomorrow, 6:30 at the Huntsman Center. Game can be seen on FS1. Utah Hockey Club back in action tomorrow against Columbus. BYU men in action on Saturday, 2 o'clock on the road at UCF. Did we forget anything? I think we were very thorough and comprehensive on the show today.
I think we were. I'm sure we're forgetting something.
No, I think we covered it. I think we did football, we did college football, pro football, we did Jazz basketball. We even did a little RSL with John Paul. You know what's weird? I don't know what this is, probably age. The past couple of weeks, I've had 2 really weird situations occur. I thought I was 45 for like 10 days. I'm 46. It's not a huge gap, but somebody was asking me, like, hey, when's your birthday? I'm like, oh, it's in March. And I'm like, yeah, I'm turning 46. And it didn't even faze me. I did that like 3 times over the course of 10 days. And it wasn't like some desire to be younger. It's like, you're 45. I was off by a year. I did that for like 2 weeks.
After a certain amount, they're just kind of just another day, right?
That's rude. That's mean.
Not saying you're old.
No, you were saying that I'm old, and that's fine.
46 of them.
I'm aging.
That's a few birthdays.
I also aggressively prepared my day. I think it was Tuesday. Let's see. I'll tell you exactly what day it was. I aggressively prepared my day, had a sitter for Duke, and had everything ready to go down to the Delta Center on Tuesday night to watch the Jazz play the Warriors. They definitely were at the Chase Center in San Francisco.
Did you go downtown?
I did not, but I almost did.
I've done that before, just so you're.
The only reason I didn't is because I came in to do the show, and I was ready to go. I was, had a sitter for the dog, and then we had an NBA guest on. I'm like, all right, let's talk Jazz Warriors. And then I pull up the game. I'm like, oh, they're on the road.
Yeah.
So 2 just total mind farts, I guess, over the past couple weeks.
It's January.
It is. All right, Craig Smith Coach's Show. Coming up on the other side, Porter, what comes our way on a Friday edition of The Drive?
Speaking of that guy, Craig Smith hops on the show on a Friday edition of The Drive. We'll chat with Spencer Nelson, some more college hoops, NBA All-Star stuff, reactions with one Richard Smitty Smith, talking some Jazz as well. The return of Smitty and Super Bowl champ, head of the Super Bowl, one Terrell Burgess joins the program.
Oh, very nice. That'll be a great Friday show. Get your weekend started out the right way. But special thank you on this Thursday to Andy Larson, to Scott Mitchell, to JP Chunga. If you miss any of the sound from the show, go to the website, ESPN700sports.com. Download our app. ESPN 700 app is free in the App Store. Then for what we do in our space, podcast page, check us out. Follow wherever you get shows. Subscribe, rate, review, say nice things. Give us all the stars. You will be eternally blessed. He's Porter. I'm Spence saying goodnight. Craig Smith Coach's Show with our guy Riles comes up on the other side right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network.